This conference will now be recorded.
Well, since they seem to want us to start, let's go ahead and get started. It's a little before 7, but we do have a quorum present. James Graves is not here tonight, but we have 5 members present. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did I count right this time? Okay, so we do have 5 members present. We need to take a quick look at the agenda. Basically, one case tonight.
Steve,
Yes.
go back to pledge.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Got ahead of myself. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence afterward. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And they try to put that in red, so I'll see it, but I never do. All right, again, we have a quorum present. Any suggestions, changes, or additions to the agenda?
I move that we present the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Review of minutes from February 21st, and we've already noticed there's at the bottom of the first page, almost at the bottom, there's a paragraph that needs to be taken out of there. That was a carryover from the previous week, previous meeting.
Make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we have a single case for the public hearing tonight. As always, I'll read the description of the case. We will have the county staff, in this case, Jonathan, will present the information and answer any questions that we might have. The applicant will have a chance to address the planning committee and also answer questions or get responses. Following that, we will have time for public comment. We have one person who's asked for a chance to do a PowerPoint presentation, so we'll probably try to start with that. Otherwise, just a reminder, we do ask, just for courtesy's sake, so everybody gets a chance, that we try to limit comments to 3 minutes. All right. Case number SU-03-24-01. Ms. Patricia Karowski, the President of the Board of Directors for the Homeless Animals Rescue Team, Incorporated, HART, has applied for a special use permit to construct and operate an animal rescue kennel on an A1 agriculture zoned lot. In the A1 zoning district, a kennel is allowed by SUP. The subject lot is 35 acres and contains 2 existing dwellings. The proposed kennel structure would not exceed 10,000 square feet of area under roof and house or shelter no more than 50 dogs and 25 cats at any given time. If approved, a temporary kennel would be established utilizing the lot's existing structures or potentially temporary structures in accordance with the Uniform Statewide Building Code. In addition, the SUP would run with the applicant and therefore be non-transferable or assignable. The subject property contains 2 postal addresses, 18 and 310 Old Sparks Road, Culpeper, Virginia, and is identified on Madison County's tax maps as 43-5. Anything to add there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. As you know, this is an application that has come back. This was originally heard a few months ago, so it's here for your consideration tonight. I do want to point out before I run through conditions, current conditions that are in here for consideration of this SUP. In your packet includes emails of those stating their thoughts on the project, whether it's opposition or for. I believe majority, if not all, those are in opposition. So I do not want to gloss over that. We have that there that you had in advance for review, as it would also become part of the public record to include. I believe there is two illustrations that want to be covered tonight. I've checked with the chairman. One will be a PowerPoint presentation by Mr. Yagi, and the other is, I'm going to call it a neighborhood or a visual of parcels. I believe Mr. Kearney would like to present that. So that's a little background. When you find it appropriate, Mr. Chairman, for those visual aids, please instruct me to do so, and I'll bring them up.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. So HART stands for Homeless Rescue Team Incorporated. As you stated, they have applied for a special use permit to operate a kennel on 35-acre A1 zone property. In this A1 zoning, a kennel is allowable by special use permit. HART is a nonprofit, 501c3 group. The proposed kennel, and there's a sketch or a design I will bring up here momentarily. I want to clarify, it is roughly a 9,500 square foot facility that's being proposed. The advertisement stated it would not exceed 10,000 square feet, so I think we're there, whether we're close to 10,000 or under. However, I know the dimensions can be a little misleading. I'm going to show the layout that's in your packet here as well for the public to see. That is what is under roof. There's an interior courtyard that's part of the design. So when you see the dimensions earlier on, a little over 6,000 of that interior is open courtyard. There's some visuals of the property on Old Sparks. There is a home there now. I believe the objective would be for a caretaker to be on site. So there is a residency there for that. There have been some changes there listed. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on where we were at those points. I think it's important to talk about the current. So I would like to go ahead and read the current conditions. There are, I believe, 13 of those. Condition 1, and this is an update as of March 1st, 2024. The SUP shall run with the applicant and shall not be transferable or assignable. Condition 2 is at any given time on the subject said lot, the total number of dogs sheltered in the permanent kennel facility shall not exceed 50, and a total number of cats sheltered shall not exceed 25. Dog and cats in the permanent kennel facility under 6 months of age and under 3 months of age, respectively, shall be required to remain indoors and shall not be considered or counted against the total number of allowable dogs and cats on the site/lot. The total number of dogs sheltered during operations of the temporary kennel facility. So as you may recall, there's a temporary approach if this were to be approved, and then they would move to construct the long-term. So this is referencing both operations. The temporary kennel facility shall not exceed 15, and the total number of cats sheltered shall not exceed 25. Both the permanent and temporary kennel facilities shall not house more than 50 dogs combined. Condition 3, the kennel shall comply with all regulations and requirements as promulgated by the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Resources. VDACs, for those who don't know, they regulate and inspect kennel operations, the same as the animal shelter that's ran by Madison County. Condition number 4, the permanent kennel structure shall not exceed 10,000 square feet in floor area under roof. And the permanent kennel structure shall be completed on or before March 1st, 2025. So there is a timeline to complete that permanent structure should this be approved. This permanent kennel facility shall be construction in conformance with HART Rescue Kennel Design. Attached to this report is Exhibit A. We will show you the exhibits at the end after all the conditions. The kennel design shall contain 2 interior open-air walled courtyards which shall serve as outdoor run areas and play areas for dogs. The permanent kennel's interior walls and interior courtyard walls shall utilize resilient channel soundproofing or a similar construction technique measure as a mechanism to increase interior soundproofing prior to the issuance of building permits for the permanent kennel structure. The proposed interior soundproofing techniques and materials shall be approved by the county's building official. Number 5, all animals shall be inside the kennel facility on or before 8 p.m. and shall not be allowed outside until 7 a.m. or after daily. An animal inside the facility shall not have access to an outdoor run or an outdoor interior courtyard. I think that's important because it's covering the internal courtyard, the interior courtyard, as well as the outside of the building structure itself. As needed, a single leash dog may be walked outside of these hours. Condition 6, Hart shall exclusively maintain the roughly 0.3 mile portion of the private road known as Old Sparks Drive from the intersection with State Road Wayland's Mill, that's Route 618, to Hart's easternmost property line, that'll be shown in one of the exhibits, as necessary maintenance shall include, but shall not be limited to grading and graveling Old Sparks Road. This roughly 0.3 mile portion of Old Sparks Drive shall be maintained to the road's current condition as of December 31st, 2023, and there's an exhibit showing the current condition, so if you should improve, we kind of have a baseline of what that road would be kept and maintained to. Condition 7, Hart shall provide the current or succeeding owners of the adjoining property identified on Madison County's tax map as 43-8 with a 24/7 on-site contact mobile phone number. Provided a reasonable request is made with a minimum 2-hour notice, a mutually agreeable time shall be established to remove dogs from the outside dog runs and place inside a kennel facility as requested by said adjoining property owner. Condition 8, the permanent kennel facility shall be located on the subject lot as shown on Exhibit C attached to this document. The temporary kennel facility shall contain an exterior fence, and this fence shall be a minimum of 6 feet in height, be covered in a semi-opaque sound baffling material, and substantially conform with the visual examples attached to this document as Exhibit D. The permanent kennel, this is condition 9, the permanent kennel facility shall contain a bathroom and shall meet all Virginia Department of Health requirements. 10, the temporary kennel facility shall be located on the subject lot as shown on Exhibit E attached to this document. The temporary kennel facility shall operate in compliance with all provisions of conditions stated in this document. Existing or temporary structures utilized for the temporary kennel facility shall meet the requirements of the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code. Item 11, this was a change originally when there were 14 conditions. Item 11 at that time had to do with noise or more reference of a noise ordinance. That was removed. That should be brought clear to attention tonight. So item 11, at its current written, the county zoning administrator or their designee may enter the subject property for a site visit on in any day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. to investigate potential noncompliance with the SUP conditions stated in this document. The zoning administrator may also be accompanied by the county's animal control officer during a site visit. If a site visit results in evidence of noncompliance with the SUP conditions stated herein, a formal written report will be provided by the zoning administrator to Hart with correction action or actions to be taken. Failure to adhere to the SUP conditions or take corrective action to ameliorate potential violations, that means rectify, mitigate, may result in Hart's SUP being revoked in accordance with Section 15.2-2286 and Section 15.2-2204 of the Code of Virginia. Condition 12, in accordance with the Madison County Site Plan Ordinance prior to the issuance of building permit, an official site plan for the proposed permanent kennel shall be submitted to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and approved with modifications or denied by the Board of Supervisors. Again, for those of you here tonight, it is important we have this body as the Planning Commission. They will do their review and comments with an ultimate recommendation one way or the other to the Board of Supervisors, who has ultimate authority to approve, deny, whatever they decide. Moving to the last condition, number 13, failure to comply with any of the conditions set forth in this document shall constitute a zoning violation and may result in legal action or actions necessary to revoke said SUP by the Madison County Zoning Administrator. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I know that's lengthy. First, I'm pulling up Exhibit A for members of the Planning Commission, the board, and the general public. This is Hart's current design. I should have had a pointer. I apologize. If you'll follow my mouse or my cursor, whatever you know the arrow as. Again, this building is not to exceed 10,000 square feet on the roof. I think it was around a little over 9,000 stated. That is this parameter of that. The courtyard that was referenced as interior courtyard is this portion here. So again, if you combine the two together, yes, that's a lot of square feet, but I want to specify what is being stated to be under roof versus open courtyard design. With Exhibit B, this is in reference to the section of the road, the 0.3 miles that was referenced that must be maintained or is part of the condition to be maintained. Waylands Mill Road, there's an intersection back here of Leon Road, Ford Shop Road, or Waylands Mill, which this eventually heads into Culpeper County. So it's where the intersection of Waylands Mill and this private drive known as Old Sparks Drive goes back to the property that is owned by Hart. Your next exhibit, Exhibit C, that shows you the location of the permanent kennel facility. So you have a visual aid there. Let me zoom in a little bit more so you can have that visual aid of where they're planning to put the kennel facility. So that is Exhibit C, bless you. Moving to the Exhibit D, there was reference there of the opaque, I think this is the sound or privacy, but the baffling and screening, if you will. That's an example there in Exhibit D. Exhibit E is giving you the location of the temporary kennel facility. So it is important. Both facilities, either temporary or permanent, are described and shown on the exhibits. So that is the conditions, Mr. Chairman, that are listed as part of this SUP consideration. Again, the total numbers, I know this has been something the Planning Commission has asked several times, was the number of animals, and that number is currently at 50 dogs and 25 cats. That's the information I have here tonight. I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have, or certainly the applicant is here for any questions. It is their application, so it may be best to ask the applicant, but staff stands ready to help you in any way we can.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anyone have a question for Mr. Weekly before we move to the applicant?
I've got a comment.
Okay,
So, once again, I mentioned this during the first go-around, and we've lost several months, and we've still got a timeline here. I understand we need a timeline, but if we go with the timeline of March 1, 2025, we don't even, that's less than a year at this point, we don't even have a site plan or anything like that. I suggested if approval, whatever, if we do put a timeline here, we need to put something in here that's enforceable, where we don't even need to put anything in here at all. Not quite sure why we need too much of a timeline anyway, other than I'm sure that they're going to want to have this built as soon as they can. Of course, what that does allow to do is get the dogs out of the temporary kennel and into something that's more soundproofed. But I still think at this point, less than a year to have this constructed is not anything that they can probably do.
any other comment or question for Jonathan? All right, very well. If the applicant would like to go to the microphone, identify
Turner.
yourself as always.
Ms. Turner, if you will power that up, please. Thank you.
As always, identify yourself and prepare yourself.
Patricia Kurowski from
Yes.
Homeless Animals Rescue Team.
Okay, I think we have some questions.
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions and some comments. I want to start out by saying that I think it's a wonderful thing to rescue dogs and cats and help dogs and cats. I also think it's a wonderful thing to be a volunteer. I volunteer for a lot of things myself, but I got a lot of questions to ask about this. Number one, ma'am, who do you have, or do you have someone that is trained or certified to run a shelter or kennel? Have they done it in the past?
Yeah,
I'm not talking about just feed and water, that know how to run a kennel.
we have a long-term volunteer that has been taking care of anywhere between 10 and 25 dogs at a property that she runs, so,
So now we're talking 25 more, 50.
no, I'm talking about she's got that experience. So she's been doing this since at least 25 years, so she's got a lot of experience. She worked at, she worked at Rappahannock Animal Rescue.
I understand,
So
but,
she's got a lot of experience from the many years of rescue work and working with animal shelters.
but I've spent the week kind of traveling around to all the local areas, asking a lot of questions, and there's quite a bit more to running a shelter than just working there. When you're the manager there, from what I've talked to these people, it changes a lot.
And, I mean, our intention is to hire staff. She was the manager at Rappahannock, that's all right. She predates when I was the organization. So Mary Lou Bywaters is the name. She's gonna be living on site, and she'll be managing the staff, and we will hire staff, and we'll also be coordinating with the shelter too, so, I mean, our intentions are to hire proper staff and get proper training, whatever we need to do. We have probably at least a year of building before we actually have the shelter there, so.
So this won't be all volunteer, it'll be paid staff
Oh,
there.
yeah, mostly paid staff. We're hoping to have volunteers come and walk dogs and things, but, and we have lots of volunteers who'll be doing a lot of work, but we will have primarily paid staff.
So when we first looked at this project, you had the building down over the hill, and now the building's moved up on top of the hill. Is that correct?
Well, actually, we originally talked about it was right where we have it now. Then because of the concerns about, this is before I was aware that any of the neighbors had any issues. And Mr. Yagi, who lives up the hill, or actually over the hill, was complaining about it, so we agreed to move it down behind the White House, which is further away. But when we changed the design to have the courtyard version, there was, first of all, there's not enough space in there, and also consulting with our architect, is that it's not as flat down there, so it'll be harder to build it. So this is a nice open field. The dogs' runs will no longer be outside of the building, they'll be inside the courtyard, and,
But in my experience, if you've got something down the hill in a lower spot, you're gonna get a lot less noise than you're gonna have if you got it up on the hill.
this is down the hill. So our property starts at the top of the hill, the red house at the top of the hill is up high. And
It's
then-
not down the hill where we originally started at.
So if you look at the property there, on the drawing, to the right, at the top right, is the red house. The property going from right to left is sloping down. And then going down from the top to the bottom also slopes down even further. And it gets really close to, there's a stream back there, and it's not flat, and there's trees. So we really don't want to cut any trees. It just goes against our grain to kill anything living. So it's a nice open field. It is down the hill. My understanding is Mr. Yagi is concerned because he's downhill from us, but that would be, you go up the hill to the house and then back down the hill toward Yagi's property. So that should, if there was any noise, it should be stopped by the hill. So it just, we originally wanted it there, then we thought it might be open air, the wind would be too cold in the winter, but since we're gonna have them in the courtyard, that's no longer a concern. And it just makes the most sense.
So explain a little bit to me about this temporary kennel. There's an existing barn there, you're gonna pour some concrete in it and put up some fence and
Yeah.
have some runs there till you get your
Yeah.
building done.
So the barn has already got a beautiful cement floor. It's a very well-built barn, it's just recently renovated, it looks like. So we will add cement pads on 3 sides of the building, cut holes and have guillotine doors, and put the fencing, all of it will be opaque so the dogs don't see each other. And then outside of that, we'll have additional fencing to make sure that so you can let the dogs out, and if they escape, there's another barrier. And we'll have it heated and air conditioned, so it should be, and we're gonna build it with the, have our consultant has recommended some materials, similar to what you use in an indoor pool that would be permeable, be okay in moisture and also, absorb the noise.
So I understand that when you build your permanent kennel and you do all your wash down or whatever, there will be a drain field system,
Yep.
that everything that comes out of that building will go in a drain field system. Now, in your temporary building, that will not be the case, is that correct?
Right, and I think we'll use old-fashioned mop and bucket, just like I do with it.
So when we're on a little bit of a slope and we're hosing down there and we're washing down, that stuff's gonna run down the hill and through the grass and on down the hill to wherever it goes to a certain degree, because you're not gonna catch all the water without a catch system.
Right, I don't know that we'll be hosing down, I assume we'll be doing some, but, this is an agricultural area, I mean, if,
Well, let me ask you this, do you take dogs from out of state?
occasionally, most of them are from Virginia, Grundy County and,
So last year, how many would you say you took from out of state?
out of state, maybe. Yeah,
I got it here on a piece of paper, it was 99,
I would say I'd be surprised if it's more than 20, 30.
because in 21, it was 242.
During the pandemic, we literally ran out of dogs in Virginia, and that's what we.
So do you take dogs from the state of Maryland?
Oh, yeah.
And here's where here's where my concern is. Let's say that you go to Maryland and you pick up a dog and you bring it back and you put it in your shelter. And of course, you don't know if it's anything wrong with it or not. You can look at it and it looks healthy or whatever, and you don't call the vet every time a dog comes. So you bring it back from Maryland, you put it in the kennel, and the next day you wash the kennel down, and whatever runs down the hill. Well, Joe over here that owns a piece of land, he hears the dogs barking, he wants to go see what the thing's all about. So Joe's dogs comes over and starts running around through the grass and running around the fence. Now, I read in here in a piece of paper that they have an outbreak of that respiratory disease in Maryland. So if you brought that dog back here and you put him in a kennel and you washed that kennel down and his dog got it, and then he went to visit the neighbor and his dog got it, guess what? Madison County's got a problem.
Okay, so if I can address all of those. Number one, respiratory illnesses are not spread by washing feces or urine. It's by breathing the air. Second of all, our property will be fenced in. So if you think that the water is gonna reach somewhere that's not fenced, that's just not gonna happen. We're gonna have, once we have the big building, it's gonna have the big building and a large fenced area around it. The temporary kennel is gonna have a large fenced area around it. And like I said, our intent is not to hose down that temporary facility, it's to mop bucket and water. So I don't,
If you let water run out of that concrete, it's gonna run somewhere. It ain't gonna stop when it gets to your chain link fence.
it'll soak into the ground. That's really nice grassy area, so so.
So let me ask you another question. If you bring a dog today and you got your temporary shelter, you're gonna bring the dog out of the van that you bring him in on and lead him over, put him in your shelter?
So the temporary shelter, yes, because we're not gonna have a drive-in, door.
So if that dog comes out of that van and he's got a problem, he can put it in that grass and another dog can get in it.
Okay, so we're gonna have a fenced area and the van will drive into the fenced area and close it.
In the temporary. I know you do in the permanent.
No, the temporary too, it'll be we are obsessed with not losing a dog, so we will have a large fenced area around the temporary kennel, the van will drive in, close the door, and then lead them straight into the building. Most of these dogs we get, they've been,
So, so in a day's time, sometimes you could pick up 2, maybe possibly 3 dogs.
we could,
So if you go to Abington and you pick up a dog and you get back and you've got another call and you got to go to Leesburg and get another dog in Leesburg. So you go to Leesburg and you get that dog. Well, let's say that when you got the dog in Abington, that dog had parvo. You get back and you unload him and you take the van and you go to Leesburg and you get that dog. Now you got another dog with parvo.
so been doing this for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
We have a spray called Rescue.
Mhm.
It's used in the hospitals. So we hose down the vans, or we spray down the kennels in between runs. Most adult dogs are immune to parvo because they've had some sort of vaccines. It's only a problem with puppies. Puppies rarely touch the floor. If they're that small, they're literally carried from the building into the van and from the van into the building. So adult dogs, should not get that. That is the only disease that you could possibly be concerned about, hosing floors down. And like I said, use Rescue, it'll kill the germs as we clean it up. The solid waste will be cleaned up probably with paper towels and put in a trash bag and then cleaned with Rescue. So we've been doing this a long time. It's very expensive when you get puppies with parvo. You spend $10,000 for one outbreak, so we are super careful with it.
You've been rescuing dogs for a long time, but not running shelter for a long time.
I've had as many as 30 puppies in my house. So I have, my husband turned half of my garage into a little puppy area and have separated off areas, and so I did 30 puppies one time. So usually I keep it to one litter because that is not wise, and those are my dumb young days that I've done that. But so yes, we've had experience with it.
So you mentioned at one of our earlier meetings that when y'all adopt a dog out, it generally costs from $700 to $900. Is that what you said it cost?
Adoption fee? No.
The adoption fee?
It's $475 for an adult dog, $525 for a puppy, and I think we have a discount for seniors. And cats, I think it's $200, but
Well, and here's where I'm kind of puzzled. You go to our shelter and you can adopt a dog and it's had its vaccinations, it's been wormed, it's been neutered, the whole deal, and it's $95.
that's because it's subsidized by tax dollars.
So
We don't get tax dollars.
if you go to our shelter and you get a dog that's $95, then you take him and it's $475, $500 to adopt it out. And our shelter recovers no money from that, and then you get the money to put into your coffers where you take care of these dogs.
I guarantee you, we're not making money on the adoption fees. It helps offset our cost. So you might, every so often we'll get a dog fully vetted, and yep, we make $525 on that puppy. Puppies, they're not neutered, so we pay for the neutering. But an adult dog, $475, but then you'll probably have, at least one other that will spend $2,000 or $3,000 on it. They, have a bad eye, they've got, hip dysplasia, they've, heartworm. A lot of the dogs you get are heartworm positive, and we spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 for that treatment.
Well,
We do a lot of fundraising, we get some United Way and CFC money, and then the adoption fees offset it.
so what would you say in a period of a year, the income would be in those adoption fees? Just a ballpark guess.
I think it's about $1,000, 500 times 1,000. Yeah, we don't always get the fees, so
I'm just asking for a guess.
$50,000.
50,000? No, that's not what it says. About 500,000.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to do math.
Okay,
But, but like I said, we don't always get the fees. Sometimes long-term fosters end up adopting them. If they're sick, sometimes people will say, I'll pay for the neuter, so we waive the fee and they pay for the neuter. So we're kind of flexible. We try to make it as easy as possible for the adopters. We do track and make sure everyone is spayed and neutered. We set up an appointment before they take them. We don't let them do the final adoption until the spay or neuter is done.
so you say that you helped Madison County by taking some dogs from Madison County, and which you did, and I went and checked that because I was curious. From 2016, back far as the records go, you never adopted any dogs from Madison County till 2023, and then you took two in 23 and took one in 24, and you never got those dogs from Madison County until you applied for this land and this permit. Is that a coincidence, or what happened there?
We asked answer the pleas that we receive. So Madison was not on our radar. My understanding is the shelter is not bursting at the seams. We have a lot of shelters, they'll literally, they'll call us one day, we'll load up a van and bring dogs back, and they call the next day, and it filled up again. So this
Well-
is a nicer area than other areas in need.
Well, when I talked to Culpeper Shelter, I talked to several different shelters, and there's not been any dogs taken for any of those shelters I talked to.
It's where the need is, where the highest need is, and, I mean, there's a lot of rescues in Northern Virginia. My sister has a rescue, and they go down to Tennessee and Mississippi to get puppies. We concentrate on Grundy and Abingdon. There's still a few shelters that we started working with during the pandemic down in South Carolina, North Carolina, but, we know
Well,
where the need is, and
I checked with our shelter the other day, and we had 5 dogs in our shelter, I think, and I think we can handle up to 25 dogs. Apparently, our shelter manager is doing a pretty good job, and in 2022, they was actually got award for a no-kill shelter.
I mean, I'm not sure what the problem is. I mean, we're rescuing dogs, we're not discriminating which county they're from. They've gotta be
Well-
within a reasonable distance so we can get them to us.
Well, my concern is, are we helping local people? Are we helping the county? Are we helping local people?
We're here to help too. I mean, so if, we'll help as needed. My understanding was there's a really bad stray cat population. You know, that's something we could probably work on and possibly repurpose the temporary kennel as a sanctuary for stray cats. The beautiful thing, you catch them, you spay them, and you give them a good rest of their lives if they're not adoptable. We have some barn possibilities too, so we've got some people with barns looking for cats, so we place as many as we can.
The last workshop meeting we had, you gave us a piece of paper from a gentleman that had done a noise report.
Yep.
Now, I read this thing 3 times to hope that I understood it the way I was reading it. And the way I read this is if you, with this noise report, if you do what's on these 2 pages, this will make this noise report work. That's what I read. Now, you told us in the last meeting, you didn't want this to be part of the special use permit, but you wanted to pick and choose the items off of here that your budget would allow you to do.
Okay, so we've been consulting with them. They're on the phone right now, so they can answer questions. The first page was just implementing the courtyard, and it says it very clearly there. The courtyard will have opaque fencing around all the runs, and then have a barrier from the play area so the dogs don't see the play area. That's the calculation he was doing there. The rest of that was talking about anything that we can implement on the interior of the building when we're building it to make the interior less noisy for the dogs and for the humans working in there. The noise in the building is not expected to leave the building. That's the building. The courtyard design is what he was giving the assessment there for. And he's on the phone if,
Well, I don't really have any questions for him. I mean, right here, if these things, from what I read, is what makes this thing a whole lot more soundproof.
it does, and we'll implement as much as we can, but some of it, there's, for instance, their suggestion is to have a separate, every 10 dogs will be in their own little room, their own heat, air conditioned, no connection at all to the other rooms. That would be just crazy expensive to do, and, we can't afford a $3 million building. We're looking at, just my guess is somewhere in the ballpark of $1 million. So we're implementing the things that'll give us the biggest bang for the buck. If it was a perfect world and we were, people were paying a bunch of money to board their dogs with us, maybe we would build something like that, but that's not what we're doing. We're doing rescue work. If it was a perfect world, we wouldn't have to do this, and we're doing the best that we can. And we will work with them all the way through the design process, but we have to keep it reasonable.
Well, I just got a couple comments to make, Mr. Chairman. And number one is, I'm in the real estate business, so to speak, and I sell a lot of real estate. And I can assure you that the people that own houses around this, when this is built, the real estate value is gonna go down. There's no way around it. It's gonna go down. And the other comment I got is, all of us up here, including this board, we took an oath for the health, safety, and well-being of the citizens of Madison County. And for those facts, I can't support this.
Thank you, Pete. Any other questions, comments, and questions for the applicant? I do have, since you have your consultant on the phone, could he give us perhaps some specifics about exactly how the courtyard design will mitigate the sound on the outside of the building? I mean, assuming you've got a certain level of sound within that courtyard, how much does it actually reduce the sound that travels outward?
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to check in the back. Is there a certain name so Ms. Turner can track who that is? All right, if you want to go ahead and call, Mr. Chairman, is it okay to call on him now?
Yes, yeah, that's what I was asking for.
He's unmuted. Mr. Scott, you can go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you all very much for your time here tonight. I'm Scott Learned, based in Connecticut. I'm licensed as a professional engineer in Virginia. We actually do a lot of work around. We've done animal shelter design and engineering in Virginia Beach, Fairfax County, Leesburg. We're working on a project right now in Chesterfield. I have 30 years of experience in doing this, and believe me when I tell you every one of our clients has concerns about noise control, so it's a very important factor. You asked specifically about the courtyard, and originally when Patricia's architect provided me with a plan, it had a number of dog kennels that were outside, no courtyard. And I immediately reacted to that, even before we got into discussion about noise control, that indoor-outdoor runs that were exposed to the outside would definitely be audible. And we needed to create barriers to enclose the dogs. And the courtyard actually is a very effective barrier because the mass of the building itself mitigates about 50% of the barking noise. The other comment that I just want to add about the courtyard as well is that, and Patricia alluded to this, we know that smaller groupings of dogs, and dogs that are organized in each kennel zone by age, temperament, play style, is an important factor in reducing their stress levels and their reaction levels. So one of the things that we've even looked at more recently, and I'm going to suggest to the architect, if I may, if the organizer can give me access to share my screen, I'll show you a quick modification of this.
Okay.
We still don't seem to have.
I think we have you, but I don't see your.
Yeah, it's blanked out for me. But I can describe it to you. Basically, we divide the courtyard into, think of it as being divided into 8 smaller groupings with opaque walls, 6 to 8 feet high, that are soundproof. Imagine creating smaller play areas that are dedicated to 5 or 6 dogs apiece, depending on the area, rather than having one large area. A point being to create smaller zones of the dogs. Oh, very good. Thank you. Now I'll show you. Do you see my screen? I can make it a little bigger. So I just did some lines on here illustrated. These would be opaque walls with soundproofing material, but the point is to segregate the dogs into smaller groups and to give them their own play area that they can be brought out the other end, so that they're not, other animals are not visible to them, and they're in a smaller grouping, again, by size and temperament and play style. So this is a good example of how we control noise in those areas. So let me stop sharing. The other aspect, of course, is the wall construction, building construction itself. And at this stage, as the gentleman alluded to, I gave some general recommendations on what we would do, but more specifically with, once the architect has developed this into a higher level of construction documents, we will be providing very specific wall sections and wall design, as well as products that we use to control noise through the building, such that you would have very little audible noise outside of the building. You use the building itself to create a barrier. And then my recommendation in a case like this is that dogs outside are on a leash and being handled one-on-one. And that is the most effective way to control the barking in this type of scenario.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other? Yes.
I got a question for him, if I may.
Sure.
So can you kind of say whether or not what you're talking about, what's the expense in that? Because it was kind of said that they were going to do whatever they could financially afford. Is this what you're talking about really expensive, or is it on the low end, the high end on that, or how can you?
That's hard for me to quantify. It's certainly more expensive. For example, an exterior wall that is going to be a sound controlling wall, that is that it has a sound transmission class of about 65 to 70, which means that it's going to pretty completely mitigate barking noise from a dog. A dog bark is about 70 decibels, and a kennel of barking dogs can be more than 80. For a wall like that, you would have a 2x6 construction, steel stud, mineral acoustic insulation. There's a product from John's Manville. It's a mineral wool product specifically for this type of application. And then on the inside, we typically have cement board substrates instead of gypsum wallboard. And then usually there's some type of an impervious finish on the inside, such as an FRP. That type of construction is certainly more expensive than a conventional framed wall with gypsum wallboard. If you want me to put a number to that, I would say it's probably 20 to 25% more expensive. Again, I'm working at the moment with a set of schematic plans, so I honestly don't know what the architect has envisioned for the construction, but we would advise them specifically on what to do. I will say, though, that the products that we specify are very readily available. There is a cost to them, but these are not exotic products or something. These are common noise control products that are used in many applications where noise is a problem.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. You can recommend that all of these things be done to alleviate these problems, but at the same time, they do not have to abide by what you recommend.
I can't speak to that from the standpoint that I mean, obviously we will make recommendations that are in the best interests of the requirements, and I've had circumstances where planning and zoning boards have required a client to use our recommendations. I've had others where, planning and zoning board might set, a noise level, for example, or as you have already indicated, have times of the day when dogs must be indoors. That's actually very common. Operational controls. So I can't speak to that. Perhaps Patricia can, but we certainly, as a professional engineer in Virginia, I have an obligation to the public safety and health as well. And so, our recommendations are going to be the most appropriate for that circumstance.
If I can clarify,
Thank you.
it was not the building materials that I was saying we may not implement. It was some of the, like building the separate rooms with separate ventilation and things like that. Those are the things that we probably would not be implementing, but the materials, our intention was, yes, to take that advice and use those materials. So I have my architect is actually on the call too, so he's listening. And the plan is he will be working with the consultant the whole way through the design process. We have not done it because we're not going to spend the money to do a design until we know that we have approval to build a building. So, but that will come.
So if I remember correctly, was it mentioned that the runs were going to be separated? I mean, the dogs are not going to be seeing each other anyway. There's going to be a petition between the runs anyway.
Yeah, the opaque fencing around it. My very first
The interior walls I'm talking about.
The interior, yeah, everywhere.
Uh-huh.
They'll never see each other unless we're letting them out to run around together. So my first thoughts as when we first started talking about it was that we'd have it open so they could see each other sometimes, but, and I noticed that the shelter, they have like half walls in between all of them. But as I did more research and spoke to Scott, we determined that we would put the opaque walls in, between all of them. They won't see each other, except unless you're letting them out to play together. And that should be minimal time. I mean, because we're very concerned about putting dogs together that don't know each other. It takes time to make sure you have groups that can play together.
I would assume that when you put them outside together and they start playing around at playtime or whatever, to give them some exercise, they start making a lot of noise, you'll have the opportunity at that point to
Bring them in.
put the bad actors, you call, back in the run.
My experience is they don't get noisy when you put them out together.
Uh-huh.
They're just running like crazy and chasing each other and, they're getting slobber all over each other, but they're not. I mean, unless one of them hates the other, but like I said, those would be the bad actors that are not allowed out.
Okay, so at this point, if I'm understanding correctly, and again, this would come up at the site plan stage anyway, but currently you're considering the exterior wall that he's describing as the 2x6 structure with the steel studs and so forth.
Yeah, we hadn't gotten into that detail yet, so, yeah, we would go with his advice on that, to at least the exterior walls to make it so the noise doesn't come out of the shelter. Where we may not be able to afford to do as much as to make it less noisy inside.
Mhm.
But, I mean, we'll do the best that we can.
And your preliminary drawing shows, let's see, I only see 4 openings shown in the exterior walls.
So this, and that was thrown together by our architect very quickly. He
Mhm.
literally did it. So he changed from the old design to this literally in a day. So that is just to demonstrate the courtyard idea, and we would work through the details. Every time I speak to the architect or the consultant, we make additional changes to make it better. So, and we're thinking 2 years is a more appropriate timeframe to have it built than 12 months.
That was going to be my next question,
Yeah.
going back to my first
I
comment.
think we'd already modified that at one time. It must not have made it, I think we started fresh again.
We started fresh again, but we're back to that
Yeah.
March 1st of,
Yeah.
so
That's probably,
if we recommend something, at this particular point, you'd want 2 years from now, or you'd want a year and a half, or you got any idea?
I would like to have at least the 2 years. I mean, we'll be doing it as fast as we possibly can.
I'm
but
sure you will.
My concern is just getting going through the approval processes and just make sure that we have time. Right. at least originally my architect said 2 years should be enough. Of course, that's before we got all the details of what this building's gonna look like, so, you know, we still don't know.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I do.
Okay, Mike.
So, so being you're gonna have this kennel built, are you, and you, actually, at this particular point in time, you rely solely on foster homes? Are you gonna continue to want to have foster homes, or you,
Oh, yeah, no, we're gonna get as many foster homes as possible, but the idea of the kennel is just so that we can be free to take in, and then.
what you can't foster out?
And then, and it would give us time to find foster homes. Just because they're in the kennel doesn't mean they're gonna stay in the kennel. They immediately go to foster homes as quick as we can. A lot of times we'll put out the plea and they say, well, I can take them, but not till Saturday, or I can take them on Wednesday, and so this way we can bring them in, they can hang out at the shelter, the kennel, you know. So, and we have a lot of fosters that'll take emergencies. My house is one of the emergency spots. The van meets very close to my house, so, you know, sometimes they'll come and there'll be 4 dogs waiting for their fosters, so I'll set up 4 crates and I'll wait for the fosters to come get them, so we just want more flexibility. I prefer it not be my kitchen.
And you, I believe one of your numbers that you, I heard at one of the meetings that you placed about 1,100 dogs last year. Is that right?
Dogs and cats.
Was that dogs and cats?
Yeah, that's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Because I don't know what the percentage is, because if you do that math, you're at 3 a day, which means you're picking up 3 a day too. If you're rotating this around and you do 1,100, divide that by 365, you're at
Yeah.
3. You're at 3, averaging 3 in and 3 out every day.
This includes puppies and kittens too, so we can have 20 kittens come in on one van and, they take this much space and they get adopted very quickly in pairs, so. What's that? How many? 741.
That's what he's got down here, yeah.
So,
There's 741 dogs and 427 cats.
on an average weekend when we do our adoption events, we get a list of 12 or 15 that were yes to adopt, and then we finish processing them, so, and we work throughout the week too, so a lot of these go straight to foster homes, they never go to any kind of boarding facility. We do pay for boarding at some places, so some of them are boarding, it's costing us a lot of money, and that's why we want to have our own facility.
Do you have a quarantine facility? Are you going to have any area there for quarantine in case you do have some kind of an
Yes.
outbreak or?
That's part of the idea of having the separate sections, and then we have, I think, 6 or 8 rooms designed in the interior so that we can put a quarantine in. Quarantine is the biggest problems with puppies. So we have puppy kitten rooms, and that way you bring in a litter, you give them their own room. Most of it is not airborne, most of it is contact, so if they're in their own room, we use our, either bleach or the rescue, just make sure you clean your feet, when you come out of the room. The airborne, every so often we have some coughing, but we've never had a big problem with that. I said, well, we have and that's part of the reason for wanting the 50 rooms. We don't necessarily intend to have them all filled. We want the flexibility of moving dogs around and they get along together.
Follow up on, well, actually, both Mike's comment and Pete's. I think you mentioned this quite a bit earlier, but I'm not positive. What kind of health screening do you have, or what kind of health screening is done before you pick up dogs to bring to the?
It varies. Some of them come to us completely vetted at the shelter. Some of them come with no vetting at all. We have a vet in Charlottesville that we stop at, and we run the dogs through there. They check them out, give them a rabies shot, and then we bring them up. So we get them done as quick as we can. We do our own vaccines other than the rabies, so we do the Bordetella, the distemper shots. We deworm them, heartworm preventative, get them heartworm tested. So we do it all as quick as we can. Sometimes, some shelters are better than others. Some will do all the vetting. some won't do any, and we just get them as quick as we can. We're trying to develop a relationship with the local vet, and when possible, schedule it. Like we use Blue Ridge Animal Hospital, they're great for, they were bringing in 6 cats. Can we bring them to you tonight? They take them, they put them in their quarantine, they check them out, give them the shots, and then Kim arranges for the fosters to come pick them up. So, you know, we do the best that we can.
Okay, so essentially, either they have been vetted before you pick them up at a shelter,
Yeah.
or before you get them to your shelter as proposed, you would have them vetted before that.
If we can.
So you're, okay, well,
Definitely.
that's still leaving some open area there, but yeah. Your intention is to try and avoid having
And the-
disease introduced.
Yeah, the intention would be to have a wing or a part of the shelter, the kennels where we'll bring the new dogs in and not expose them to the ones that are already there. So that's what we're gonna have different sections. So-
Okay, so if they are unvetted, they have a quarantine section to go to.
So we have the separate rooms, so we
Yep.
can even crate them in the room and get them to the vet first thing.
Yes, Pete?
I got a couple more questions, Steve. You have an office right now in McLean. Do you plan on moving that office to this facility?
We have an office in Fairfax. And right now, that office is full of papers. There's no people in it.
But are you planning on closing it and moving it down here?
But yeah, we need to have an office, an official office for United Way. So we would probably, as soon as our lease is up, we probably would make that this address. But it's not like it's an office that the public comes into. It's an office.
So when we had our last workshop, we talked about 50 dogs and 25 cats. And the comment was made that maybe after you get your facility built, that you may take the temporary shelter and turn that into a place for cats. And I made the comment, well, that would be more than 25. And you said, well, I'll come back for another permit. So do you plan on expanding?
That's not our plan, but we wouldn't do it without getting the permission. Honestly, when we started talking about this, Kim and I were the cat people, and our intention wasn't to use it for cats, but we figured we just want approval to do it, to give us flexibility, especially if we, get a couple of litters of kittens, we can give them their own room until we can find a foster. So, but my understanding, my first conversations when I came to the county was that there was a lot of stray cat problem, and sometimes there's a need for a cat sanctuary. So if we build that temporary kennel, it just seems wasteful to not repurpose it for that if there is a need for it. Not our intention, but if it's needed, we'll do it, and we'll come back and get approval if we need to do it.
To follow up on what Steve said there about getting the vets to check them out, do you sometimes, after people adopt a pet, do you tell the people that you go get it vetted, we pay for it?
Yes, we do that sometimes. We're
Because-
just very flexible on that.
I guess you're familiar with Yelp. Because I Googled Yelp and
Yeah, I bet you-
I read some horror stories, yes, ma'am. And I read some good things, but I read a lot of horror stories too.
And I would say behind most of those horror stories is definitely another side of the story. People, I don't know what motivates them to do that, but we always make it right. If somebody calls and said, oh, I took my puppy home and he was sick, the only thing we say is, come back to us and we'll send you to one of our vets and we'll pay for it. Now, they sign a contract when they adopt these animals that they are taking responsibility for the health care of the animal. Even though they've signed that, if they get sick soon after, and even if it's a long time after, we do help them with it. If it's pre-existing, if we feel that so, I mean, we had a lady who had a dog, he seemed to have hip issues, we had her checked out a couple of vets, they didn't think it was a problem. When she adopted him, assumed ownership, and over the course of 3 months, took him to like several specialists, until finally one said, oh, I think he needs hip surgery. And so she immediately went and got hip surgery, but if she told us that, we would make an appointment at our vet, and we did do the second hip surgery. So we do make it right, and if it's pre-existing, we do the right thing. And if you check the other rescues out there, most of them do not do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comment for the applicant?
And we also take them back if for any reason they can't keep them in the future, we do guarantee them for life. That's something the shelter will take them back, but most of the shelters not.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay. All right, now, again, returning to the public comment, I think we have a PowerPoint presentation, and in order to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak, we will ask that you please try to confine your comments to 3 minutes or less. With the PowerPoint presentation, I understand that you are actually representing 5 or 6 people, so we'll assume that can take a little bit longer. Okay, but again, please be quick, okay, because it's going to be a long night. Thank you.
Chairman Carpenter,
Yes.
would we like to go to the, and I want to be fair, because I'm not sure how long what I have on the screen would take, but maybe would it be appropriate to go to Mr. Kearney first and then Mr. Yagi? Those are the 2 visuals, or how do you prefer, sir?
But I don't think it makes any difference to that, whichever one we've got that we can
All
bring
right,
up.
Mr.
first.
Kearney, let's go ahead and start your way, please.
Yeah, you have a
And Mr. Kearney, as he's making his way, there's, on the screen, I believe there are handouts that were provided to all planning commissioners and the Board of Supervisors. So that is what I have on the screen before you.
okay, so you have a representative for you then? Yes, okay. So if you would identify yourself, identify who you're speaking for as well, please.
Mr. Chairman, gentlemen, my name is Rex Edwards. I'm an attorney out of Culpeper, and I'm here this evening representing a number of local landowners, Michael and Kimberly Elias, and then Thomas and Lisa Kearney. Let me start with Mr. Kearney's handout. As I understand that, that is a compilation that he's put together based on his interviews of people in the vicinity of individuals who are opposed to the proposed development, those that live in very close proximity. So I'm beyond that, as far as if there are any specific questions about the means, mechanisms by which he obtained that information, I would have to defer to him. But that being said, I had prepared some comments that I knew they wanted me to share with y'all, if I could move forward, and I'm very mindful of your time. I'll be as efficient. I am speaking on behalf of a few people, so if I run a moment or 2 over, I would ask y'all's leniency, but I
Thank you.
will certainly be respectful of y'all's expectations. Let me start by saying that no one here is challenging how admirable the mission of HART is, and no one is challenging the integrity of HART. If there was a referendum on those issues, we wouldn't be here talking to you. The issue here is that they want to make use of a particular piece of property that, as the applicant noted, is zoned agricultural. And the question is whether or not the intended use is compliant with the Madison zoning ordinance. And I know that the individuals I represent are not just opposed per se to a dog facility. They believe that because of the unique nature of that site, being in an agricultural area, that it is not compliant. As you know, of course, under the A1 zoning, and under any zoning, if it's either not by right or not specifically listed as a permitted use, it's prohibited. The applicant is proceeding with this as a kennel, and they are asking for a special use permit. So as we run through and just highlight the sections of Code 14-42, obviously, as y'all know, there are certain criteria that regulate whether or not it is compliant or not. And if we look at subsection B, of course, the use needs to not change the character or the established pattern of the development area. And I'm sure y'all know from y'all's investigation, the staff's investigation, this is an extremely rural area. There's no sort of commercial development, no sort of light industrial development in the general vicinity. Certainly nothing that is visually gives the appearance of anything approaching what is being proposed here. You've got residential, by my observation, on Wayland Mills Road, and even less dense development on Old Sparks Road. And then, of course, the subject property, you've seen the photographs of the open field and the residence that's there. If you look at the revised plan, one of the things I think has been glossed over in the presentation is just the magnitude of the footprint. We're talking 173 feet by 92 feet with a surrounding baffling fence. And I passed out before we started tonight just a few handouts. The baffling fence is photographs that you're familiar with from the packet. I haven't seen anything other than the two-dimensional floor plan, so I'm not trying to misrepresent what I believe the exterior view is going to be, but these are materials that have been provided with regard to the baffling fence. But if the baffling fence is going to surround the area, then I'd ask you to focus on what the aesthetics are from the exterior of this facility, 60 yards long, with a baffling fence as demonstrated here in these photographs. It is going to be entirely different from any structure anywhere in that vicinity. And it will change the established pattern of development in the area. And for that reason alone, I would submit that a special use permit is not appropriate under the requirements of your own zoning ordinance. The other thing to point out as far as the people coming and going is I understand this facility will be regulated by the state of Virginia as a private animal shelter. And if they receive even one stray, then it's required to be accessible to the public. Under the Virginia Code, section 3.26548 requires it to be publicly accessible at reasonable hours. They're required to publish their address in the telephone directory. So as you anticipate the amount of traffic that will come and go, like so many of the things that are being represented here, and even represented in good faith, it's fairly speculative as to what the future growth will be, what materials will be used in the construction, how much additional traffic will be generated. But there's no question that this is a private animal shelter under the Code of Virginia. And again, no question it will change the character. Subsection C indicates that the use must be in harmony with the intent of the A1 district. And I won't read all that to you, I'm sure you're familiar with it. But the essence of the statement of intent is to maintain rural open land uses. It ends by saying intensive suburban growth is less feasible. This is not rural use. This is not open land use. This does not promote a farming lifestyle. It's not a farm or a local estate residence. It is intensive suburban growth. This is a shelter that, again, does admirable work that primarily benefits Northern Virginia and areas outside of Madison County. And it is addressing, in essence, a suburban growth problem of excessive stray animals and excessive animals, and it is exporting that suburban growth problem to Madison County and making it a Madison County suburban growth issue. But that is, and I'm not suggesting that Madison County should be opposed to this project. There may very well be a number of light industrial sites that would be entirely appropriate. My focus is on this particular piece of property on behalf of the landowners, the taxpayers that live in that area, who have managed their properties with the expectation that they can rely on the zoning and that they can rely upon living in an area with agricultural intent, agricultural development that will be regulated appropriately under the zoning ordinance. Subsection C also says that the anticipated use shall not adversely affect the use of the neighboring property. So there's been a lot of discussion about the noise. The initial report from staff acknowledged there's no question there's going to be noise. No one really seems to contest that. Again, we're left to speculate about to what extent there will be noise, to what extent the efforts to remediate the noise will be effective. But the reality is there will be noise from 50 dogs concentrated in one location. And again, I'm telling you things you know, I'm just stating it for the record largely. Dogs and cats are not livestock. So I've heard people casually, not in this meeting yet, but casually say, well, cows make noise, pigs make noise, people in the country ought to be used to noise. Well, they're used to livestock noise because that's consistent with the agricultural zoning. That is consistent with the lifestyle that one anticipates when one buys property and develops property in an agricultural zone. Cats and dogs are clearly not livestock. And the noise associated with dogs, how well that will be addressed is entirely speculative. But the fact that it will be an issue for these landowners is not a speculative issue. The issue of managing this from a noise ordinance analogy that I just ask you to imagine the problems and the challenges that will confront. Every time a landowner calls, the delay, the challenge for the manpower, the drain on the resources to go out and inspect it, and then the practicality, well, what's the remedy going to be? Once these people build a $2 million structure or $1 million structure in the land, and they get 1 or 2 violations, what sort of deterrence will there be to a forceful sort of compliance from the standpoint of, are we going to shut them down after they've got $2 million invested? The reality is the noise is a significant issue that just doesn't fit in the agricultural area. To make a bad pun, it's kind of the tail wagging the dog to try to put it in here and make it work. It's an admirable design, it's an admirable goal, it just doesn't fit in the agricultural area. There's traffic, and again, to be mindful of the time, that's a very, particularly the old Sparks Road, that is just a hard compacted dirt road with a little bit of gravel and more potholes than gravel. And when you start contemplating the increase of people bringing dogs, cats in, the volunteers coming multiple times a day, that will be a significant increase over what historically has been accommodated on that road. There's a requirement that it be in conformity with the comprehensive plan. And again, to the extent that it doesn't comply with the intent of the A1 zone, it doesn't comply with the comprehensive plan. But the second thing that I put in your handout is just a brief excerpt from the comprehensive plan, page 11. But again, it points out three categories of land use: farm, forest, and then it gets down to commercial and industrial development. I would submit that this is closest to commercial and industrial, light industrial development. And it points out that there are 3 places where that should happen: the Route 29 corridor, the town of Madison, and in localities, but only when it serves localized needs. And I would submit that there's just no indication that this, as admirable as it is going to serve any localized need whatsoever. There seems to be almost uniform agreement there is no localized need for this particular shelter. It will benefit areas outside of this locality. Finally, the subsection E indicates that it shouldn't violate any ordinance of Madison County. And perhaps I buried the lead and I should have started with this. But I would submit to you with all respect, this is only permissible if you determine that it's a kennel. And if you look at the definition of a kennel, there is a definition I've provided to you, which I acknowledge is not controlling. I'm not trying to mislead you. I've provided copies of the Virginia Code where they draw a distinction between a kennel and a private animal shelter. I provide it for 2 reasons. One, to show you this is not just a figment of sort of some lawyer's creative imagination. These are important distinctions recognized by the state of Virginia from a regulatory standpoint. But that doesn't control your determination. Your county ordinance controls. So if you look at the definition of a kennel, the kennel indicates that there needs to be some element of a sale or some sort of compensation for boarding. And if we take the applicant at their word, the discussion they had with Mr. Elliott, these aren't animals for sale. They are recouping through adoption fees some of their administrative costs, some of their overhead. But by definition, this is not a kennel, even under the county code. And it clearly is not a kennel under the Virginia code. This is a warehousing shelter. The distinction in the Virginia Code focuses on a more short-term mindset with a kennel, or somebody who's going to be training, receiving a fee. But this is essentially warehousing animals from outside of Madison County. And to the extent that it is a shelter and not a kennel, it is not a permitted use. And therefore, it's not an authorized use, and it's a prohibited use. So I would submit that the use of a misnomer of a kennel and the application for a permit for a use should be denied simply because it's not permissible. But even if you decide to analyze it from the standpoint of a use permit, for the reasons I've set forth as you go through those enumerated factors, it just doesn't meet the requirements for a use permit, as admirable as the purpose may be. Happy to answer any questions that you may have for landowner.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Let me give an opportunity to counter.
Well, yeah, let's go through public comment, and then, you know, if you will kind of keep track of it. You have,
I'd like to go to Mr.
Mr.
Yagi on the
Yegi's, yes.
presentation.
okay. And again, if you would, identify yourself, those you were speaking for as well.
Hi, my name is Ron Yagi. I live at 566 Old Sparks Road, and we own the property next to Hart's property. We also have a residence there at 504. I'm representing actually 6 people who either own or live at the property. My wife, obviously, my sister, who lives in the 504, our foster daughter, and on the phone is my daughter and son-in-law, who are actually executors to the estate. They control 504, but they also will someday own it. I'm doing this PowerPoint presentation to actually try to get through a lot of information quickly. I was in the military. We do it routinely in the military. You can cover a lot more information and keep the speaker on point, and I want to do that. I know that it's getting late. I'm not going to really talk about anything on this first slide other than the rectors are my friend, and at that end, I am actually interested in making sure that we figure out a solution where they can still move into the farmhouse, and I have some options later that I'll talk about. Next slide, please. A couple of you are new, one on the board and one on the committee, I think. So everybody else really knows this. I'm not going to go through it all. I'm a retired military vet. We invested our life savings in the 64 acres with 2 houses and a lake to get away from 12 years in the Pentagon. And I rode myself hard and put myself up wet, so that's my fault. But we came out here with the idea of moving to Madison for what everybody wants to move to Madison for, presumably, and that is a nice, tranquil, rural setting and traditional family values. And so we found out about the dog shelter proposal in November. There were some meetings prior to that, but we didn't know about it. When we first came in November, actually, I was working with Ligon, trying to come up with some conditions, because I assumed the kids were already agreed since I hadn't heard about the meetings prior. It's not a criticism of anybody. It's just the way I just assumed, and I to tell you the truth, I'd never been to a meeting in Madison, so I didn't know how things were ran. Next slide, please. One thing that I've always been hesitant to talk about, and I haven't really talked about it until today, and the reason for that is there's a verse in the Bible, Matthew 6, where Jesus says, "Take heed, you don't do your good deeds before man to be seen by them. Otherwise, you will have no rewards of your Father in heaven." And so I'm taking a chance now. I'm giving up my eternal rewards in hopes that perhaps I can bring some in the future for what we do there. Our mission is actually to help others who are struggling. A lot of folks in the military have PTSD, various ailments, a lot of other folks who are our friends or acquaintances, suicides in the family, deaths, stuff like that. We run what we call our lake therapy, mostly. We obviously have a lot of time in the house, particularly if the weather is inclement. And we do biblical guidance and counseling and just come from it from a love and friendship perspective. No fees, obviously, we won't charge for that. That's just, we're trying to do the Lord's work. In one year, we had over 40 guests we had over guests for over 40 weeks out of the year. So I want to look at just a few examples. She's actually, one of them is in the room here. Ruth is our friend. Her husband was Rod. He worked for me my last assignment. He spent 45 years serving in the Air Force, 30 in uniform. He retired in August of, actually I put the date wrong on there, 2020, and his wife was sick, couldn't even come to his retirement, and then in October, he started getting sick. The week of Thanksgiving, he called me from Walter Reed Hospital and said, man, I'm really sick, and they don't know what's wrong with me. And then that following Friday, a cardiologist actually figured out that he had stage 4 liver and gallbladder cancer. Was given about 11 months to live. So that was also during COVID. And so because both my wife and I have comorbidities, we're fortunate enough to live at the end of a road. We can lock our gate if we need to. And so we were really taking it seriously. And so when Rod wasn't going through chemo at Walter Reed, he and Ruth were out there. And so you can see at the top left photo, that's Rod and I don't know how many hours over those 14 months which he ended up living, that we spent at the lake, talking about life, talking about God. With Ruth as well, and she's here tonight. She's been visiting, and that last picture on the right is the last time he was out at our house, and he died about a month later. Next slide. JD and Karen, also Colonel in the Air Force, retired. Their son, top left, that's an older picture, died tragically, unexpectedly at 35. As you can imagine, they were just completely devastated. So I sent them scripture daily, a Bible study, which he actually wrote a book about it. But their marriage was always a bit on the rocks because of infidelity earlier. And after 2 weeks out there, they just told me recently that the marriage is stronger than it was. It's not my doing, but it's God's doing, but we're just his tool. If you know the Bible at all, you know that the tool for Balaam was a jackass, so I did that sometimes. Next slide. Frankie and Ariana, both Native Americans, raised on a reservation in Wisconsin. They're related, not sisters. And both of them were depressed and suicidal. One of them had 2 abortions when she was 18 and 19 years old. And they're doing quite well now and are flourishing. Next slide. Oh, hold on. The bottom right is Frankie. The middle person is Shori Yajar, who used to own the property that Hart bought, and then Jerry. Next slide. Dean and Elaine, Master Sergeants, disabled vet. Something happened with his daughter and son-in-law in California. They just kind of went off the skids because of his military service. And they were suicidal as well, actually. They came and visited for quite a while. We actually flew to Texas for them. They're doing better, thankfully. We also have what we call Camp Yagi. Kids, grandkids, relatives, anybody else that will come. We just give them a place to teach them a little bit of scripture and have a fun time there as well. So next slide. We had a baptism at the lake this summer. There were 5 people that were baptized. You can see the red. I had the honor of baptizing my daughter, Emmy, the middle granddaughter, and Megan. This was July the 29th, and unbeknownst to us, she was going to be our foster daughter August 19th. Less than about 3 weeks later. And she's been a great blessing to us. Next slide. And here's just some miscellaneous shots that, I had to actually officiate some weddings, and Jerry's cousins, mother and daughter, both I was able to officiate their weddings. The guy on the right is 75 years old, and that was the first time that he was married. Next slide. So the lawyer did a much better job than I could do on these ordinances. Obviously, everybody here knows that there's a supremacy of federal and state law. Next slide. He also covered this, and so I'm not going to cover it too terribly much. But I did want to at least show everybody what the definitions are. Now, what struck me today, and man, oh man, I can't believe that I missed this. number 3 of the conditions said they will follow VDACs. Those definitions are VDAC's definitions of what a kennel and a private animal shelter is. So it's clear, as he said, the state differentiates between a kennel and a shelter. One is commercial and the other one is not. Next slide. And even Madison's own definition, that's clear that that's also commercial. It says our return for compensation, and there's a state definitions of what compensation actually means. So the question really is, does that mean the county doesn't have to abide by any of the definitions at the state level when it comes to zoning? Because we are given jurisdictional authority? If that's the case, then zone itself is a definition that we don't have to follow, and we know that we do. Next slide. I was talking with one of you who set me straight a little bit on the public interest, although nobody has actually made the argument. I said there was no public interest in this. And he said, well, there's a tax revenue for the animal shelter. And I thought it was probably going to be around $250,000 or $1 million, holy cow. But still, even with $31,000 a year, if it's $3.10 per hundred for $1 million facility, to disrupt so many people's lives and ignore definitions and state codes and Madison County codes and ordinances, I don't know. Next slide. Here's another one of the key codes that he was talking to. You know, the basic aim is to promote farming as a continuing way of life in Madison. I'm not so sure that the dog shelter does that, even though everybody loves dogs. Who doesn't? Next slide. Vision statement of the comprehensive county plan: preserve the county's scenic beauty, rural environment, farms and forests. The need for economic growth is obviously recognized, but when you look at the goals, still, the goal is to protect and enhance the natural beauty and rural character. I don't think that this does that. At least, I wouldn't think so. Not only that, at the bottom, and I do support any noise mitigations if this was to be approved, that Hart would be willing to pony up for. And I actually was one that mentions a Ligon about the sound baffling fence initially back in November. But when I look at that fencing, and when you drive up, and some of you have already driven out there, and you're driving up Old Sparks Road, and you're looking at a phenomenally beautiful piece of property that's on it, and then you're going to see a 15,000 square foot area that's perhaps a dog prison. They're going to try, they've said, make it look nice, but then you're going to have this chain link fencing with opaque designs all around it. And that's the first thing you're going to see. And once this is approved, if it's approved, we're never getting that back. That's there forever. You know it and I know it. Next slide. So there was some statements, and there's an engineer on the phone from DLI, and I will probably bow to some of his expertise on some of this if we're in disagreement. But here's one from Adams County, and they did a test on a decibel level, and it went out to 1,500 feet, and even at the start, it didn't mitigate that much at 64 decibels, and that was at night. And sound does not carry as far at night as it does in the daytime. Next slide. I'm not going to go through all the science of this, but somebody said in here sound doesn't bend. Total myth. Diffraction, refraction, and reflection. Sound always bends. Always bends. Has a small opening, it's going to spread out. That's how you can hear inside a football stadium. That's completely surrounded. You can hear the crowds. If the sound is going straight up, how can you hear it? Next slide. Also, sound can travel through solid walls. Now, there are absolutely, if you're willing to spend the money, soundproofing acoustic tiles and walls that will inhibit and mitigate sound. There's been no commitment yet on how much that they would be willing to put into that. But there's no limit to the number of puppies up to 6 months old, by the way, inside. And those puppies bark at nearly the same frequency level, depending on the breed of adult dogs. So if they cut corners on the outside and inside of the under roof, then you're gonna hear it. If the sound vibrates, goes through solid materials, it can go through a cinder block. Everybody knows that because a lot of the houses in Madison County are cinder block. And you can hear that my sister's dog, by the way, we had a test, barked. It's a standard poodle, 90 decibels at a squirrel. And it scared the squirrels and the deer away outside. And oh, by the way, we have a cinder block house with 6 inches of insulation. So, next one. Here's some of the decibels allowed barking. The guy on the phone said 60 to 70. That's actually probably not true for loud dogs. They go from 60 to 70 if they're not really barking like crazy. Loud is considered 90. The loudest is 113.3 decibels. 85 and above damages your hearing. What's been missed about this, though, is that multiple dogs barking at multiple decibel levels, you can hear each one separately. It's like in a band. You hear the bass, you can hear the acoustic, you can hear the keyboard. One of them is louder than all the others, right? Possibly the drums, maybe not. You hear them all distinctly because they're different frequencies. Next slide. Next slide, Art. Impact on property values, the lawyer did a lot better job than I did. I did want to say that I did a Google search on this. 54 million hits. 54 million hits. Now, a lot of it's crap. So but here are just a few of them that I just printed up, where all of these studies were talking about impact of property value when there's a kennel nearby. Next slide. Also, what I found out is, did you know there are 729 animal shelters and organizations in Virginia? 729, and their assets are $384 million. That's big business. Next slide. Not that it's bad, by the way. It's just big business. So I also did a Google search on dog kennels near me. Hart was 13 pages down, so they were number 130. It went to 29, or it stopped at 29. I don't know how many there were. I would suggest perhaps to Hart that they get their IT person to look into how they can maybe get their Hart moved up a little bit further on the line when people are searching. Next slide. We talked a little bit about Hart. Look, they are a good organization. Their heart's in the right place, no pun intended. I guess one thing, though, that strikes me a little bit is they do charge a pretty premium fee for rescue dogs. I grew up poor. South Main Street in Mount Vernon, Indiana. A pool hall to the left of me, a tavern to the right. 2 doors down, 3 more taverns. I was low to low middle income family. My parents could never even conceive of paying $50 for a dog back then, much less $500. I was walking out in the woods when I was 5 years old, along the dump. We had a dump out in the country, Bluff Road. And I heard these little dogs squealing. And I went in and there was a den of dogs, an old groundhog den under a tree stump. And perhaps I borrowed 2 of the dogs. I had a friend with me. And his name was Rocky. He lived 19 years. He was my best friend. And I think what bothers me the most personally about Hart's approach is they really are sticklers in making sure they have high-end clients who adopt the dogs, who are willing to pay $500. That totally eliminates poor kids like me who need a dog more than people who are wealthy, who have televisions and iPads and Xboxes and not. So I would have actually preferred to see them buy a property for under $250,000 and have that $500,000 and give 1,000 Ron Yaggies a puppy. I guarantee you that puppy probably meant more to me than some of my rich friends in that town. Next slide. Okay, so a little bit of analysis of Hart. There's actually no evidence of a detailed strategic plan that was developed beforehand. I'm a military guy. We plan everything. That was obvious. They had a big donor, and they sold this donor on a 50-plus dog kennel, but they made the promise before the SUP, and so now they're desperate. I don't blame them. They didn't buy the property with contingency. They're fighting out, and these quotes are from, my wife went through every meeting that we've had and took notes. If you need the video reference number, she can give it to you. But they're figuring things out as they go. They didn't buy the property with the contingency plan. That's not a quote. It's pretty clear this is the largest project they've ever planned. And quote, we fell in love with the property. The dogs could care less that they're on perhaps one of the most beautiful pieces of property in our area. Dogs don't care. Next, oh, not next slide, sorry. There are also some statements from Hart, and they've covered it, and they've done their mea culpas, and I don't want to continue to go over it, but, you know, we were even specifically stated 504 and 566 was contacted. And you know, the sad part is, we've never still been contacted. I would have been knocking on everybody's door after the first meeting in November where there was opposition to try to have coffee with somebody and do a little bit of diplomacy to perhaps win some support. It's never been done to this day. Next slide. There's a statement made that hunting dogs in Madison, that usually means deer or coon dogs, right, are the loudest. Actually, that's not true. Golden retrievers are the loudest. They're really not the hunting dogs we're talking about. German shepherds, huskies, you can see them. Then there's a quote, we want to be good neighbors. But like I said, nobody's ever tried to reach out to us. And our gate has been open every day since that young lady came into our property on 19 August, with the exception of December 24 to 26 December when we were in Williamsburg visiting our daughter. Then there was a comment about, what would you rather have, a horse or a pig farm? Well, we've already got a horse farm next to us. The rectors have 4 beautiful animals. You love watching them. I'd love to see a horse farm there, actually. But what pig farmer is going to spend $750,000 for a 35-acre patch? There's no architectural commitments by Hart. You know, we'll try to get the biggest bang for the buck. That's one quote. The temporary shelter is a trial run. The neighbors will have to see how noisy it is. There's the other quote. That's the meeting. That's how many times it's in. It's time. If times are tough in the future, we can operate it with minimal money. That has to mean getting rid of staff. And then finally, you know, it's too soon to tell if they can afford what DLI has been suggesting. Now, the DLI analysis, this is probably where Scott and I might debate a bit. I am not debating that his plan would reduce noise. It absolutely would reduce noise. It is not going to eliminate noise. One quote in the plan was, it would reduce the noise similar to a barking dog in the neighborhood. Now, the problem with that, a barking dog in the neighborhood, a loud barking dog, could be 90-plus decibels. When you have 50 dogs, the average, depending on the breeds of dogs, but if you put 50 dogs out there, the test has been ran by NASA and others, the decibel rate goes somewhere between 125 and 130 total. So it's not up that much. But the difference is, you're going to hear every single individual dog, not just the loudest. If you do a decibel read, there's going to be one maximum, but you're going to hear every separate frequency of all the dogs. Next slide. Okay, conclusions. How long have I gone? So we already talked about number 1. The only public interest in Madison is the property tax revenue. I underestimated this by a mile. I thought $250,000. They spend $1 million. That's $31,000 a year, presumably if they paid the full rate that was in the website. Me personally, I'm biased, but I think the Board of Supervisors vote should come down to simple math. Your job is to represent all of us, the residents of Madison County. But not all the residents of Madison County are directly affected by this. Only the neighbors of Hart are directly affected. And when you add up the ones that I just know about, not counting the stuff that Tommy put together, versus the support from Mike and Debbie for their son and daughter-in-law to move into the farmhouse, it's simple math on that. Now, I gotta tell you, Mike Recker is one of the best men I know. When we first came out there, we heard rumors that he'd shoot trespassers and all this kind of stuff. So we were out there on Sunday, so let's go and talk to this guy. And Jerry said, are you nuts? He's working on his tractor where he normally does. And we talked for an hour. Debbie came out, and I have a phenomenal dealer. He would give the shirt off his back for you, and his son is no different. And so I know that they would love, that is, Bear and Christina would love to be able to move back in the farmhouse, and I want them to move back there because Mike thinks he's 30 years old still, and he gets himself in trouble when he's out there working on his farm and everything. And so he needs Bear to the rescue. I don't want to be flippant on this, but not anybody sitting up here is going to be impacted by your decision. No. And I suspect that folks who live in Madison or Etland or other places, if you brought this proposal to your neighbors, to your little community, and you said, we're going to push for Hart to move a 50-plus, when we say 50, it's not 50 dogs, by the way. It's 50 dogs plus unlimited puppies, into your neighborhood, you will be ran out on a rail. And most of you are old enough to know what that means. Also, I've heard in the past committee and board meetings where, basically suck it up. We have the barking dogs. Madison County, everybody hunts in Madison County. You just have to put up with it. And change is inevitable. That was quoted. But with all due respect, misery loves company should not be the motto of the committee or the board. In fact, your job should be to help our lives. So I want to ask you, if you got so many people that are opposed to this, who are directly impacted, how can you support it? Unless you're willing to put it in your own neighborhood. Military Leadership 101. I was never a great leader, probably not even a good leader. But I will tell you what, even as a general, I was the first one through the door, so to speak. So I'm asking you not to vote any differently than if it was in your backyard. Okay, there are other options. Hart could locate, there's a realtor that's willing to find a small piece of property. They can still keep the 750 acres, or $750,000 property, and 35 acres, and make it a showpiece for fundraising, even adoptions. They could have the Boy Scouts, like they talked about, make these trails through their woods. And it would be great, and then they would have the shelter someplace that's more appropriate. They could obviously sell the land, and the way land's been going up, they would make a profit for it. Or we could think out of the box and figure out a public-private partnership. I've done them at the federal level. I know there's been some pushback from some of you on that. It's probably hard. I'm stupid. I said I spent 6 months on it, and I think I could deliver a contract in 6 months if Hart and Matt and you guys with the lawyer would help and be supportive. There's a lot of underutilized or unused Madison County property that's not doing anything. Why not use it for a good cause? If you feel that strongly about a rescue shelter that's not going to be adopting dogs to Madison residents, well, at least utilize some of the Madison County property. Thank you. I've gone too long. I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right, in view of the time, I would ask, we're going to still ask for any other public comment, but if your comment is something that's already been covered, or if, and all the letters that we've had or emails that we've had are in the public record and they're in the packet, so we've all read those. So if you have something different to say as a comment, something that's not already been covered very thoroughly, any other public comment? Again, trying to stay within 3 minutes, please. Yes, sir. Come on up to the microphone and identify yourself. Yes, ma'am, sorry. And identify yourself.
My name's Pamela Harbert, and I lived in this county now for 9 years. Almost exactly 10 years ago to this day, I adopted my soulmate from Hart. I went up to where they have their adoption practice set up. They have an excellent arrangement. Are you still at the PetSmart and Chantilly? They put me through incredible interview process on site. Then they came and visited me to my home when I was in Northern Virginia. My little Maya is with me now, down here in Madison County. I know other people that have also used Hart. The organization should be commended and assisted, not hindered. They will not only serve Northern Virginia, as some people are concerned about, they serve the state of Virginia, which affects us. And I'm trying to keep my cool right now. But when I read the comment that our shelter is no-kill, you don't even want me to get started on that, because I got a history with that county shelter. All I can say is they're good people, they're honest people, they're more ethical than a lot of the tax exempts that I have worked with, even sat on boards with. I was with Leadership Prince William when I was up north, and I've worked for some of the world's largest corporations, or I audited them. Their ethics that I have seen are impeccable. And that's all I can say right now.
Thank you. Other public comment? Yes, sir.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm Douglas M. Berry, and I live near where this property is located. And I wasn't going to say anything about whether people have animals or don't have animals, but someone put a note in my mailbox. It says it continues barking from a shelter in the size and scope. It's heard from 7 to 8, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, with no noise ordinance in Madison, no end to the noise once it is approved. And I hesitate whether I want to speak or not, but I am going to speak since I'm here. I think the person who owns their own property should have the rights to do what they want to do to the property, as long as it doesn't affect the neighbor. I sold property, and I'm going to give you some information, what's going on. I don't like to because it's my own family. And there have been times, when you get hurt from your own family, and it's very hard to do anything about it. And many nights I laid in my bed and cried that God would take me home. But I guess he's keeping me here for a reason. There is a son that lives next door to me, which I never thought would happen. He put a kennel in. It's got 4 or 5 dogs. People don't take in consideration the people who work at nighttime has to sleep in the daytime. And I have no problem with these people putting this kennel there, because I'm not going to hear it on where I live, because I hear what goes on next door to me. These dogs bark at night. They start at 3 o'clock in the morning. And like this guy said, you can hear each tone. I don't hear it so much from my bedroom. My son goes into a rage because he can't sleep at night. And he goes out and he plugs in a siren that's louder than all the dogs. And everybody in the neighborhood starts calling. What's going on up? Why can't you shut that siren up? I said, when the dogs shut up, the siren will stop. Once you cut the siren off, the dogs stop. So the police department's been called. They've been down on to visit. And they said there's nothing we can do about it. And it's nothing we can do about you doing this siren, because there's no noise law in Madison County. So I'm just telling everybody here, be a little smarter who you allow to move next door and what you allow next door to you. Because it can be beautiful in the beginning. My son took these animals, and he didn't take them because he wanted the animals. He got them because he sells the animals. And I don't think that's correct. I think talking about Bible scripture. The Bible says before the end, we shall be lovers of the Creator, not the Creator, but the creation. And that's what's going on in the world today. When we turn away from our neighbor and we put these things first, animals before our neighbors and before the love of one another, God help us. Because we are loving the Creator more than we are the Creator. So I am a lover of the Creator. So that's my testimony, and I hope that y'all make the right decision. And I don't mean to offend any of you people here, and it's not about that. But be careful how you vote, because if they're going to complete this the way they say they're going to complete it, let them do it before they open it up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other public comment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
brief point of privilege before whoever else you call on. I'd like to make a statement about online public comment, if I may.
Sure.
Folks on the line, because I've been made aware, there's a few of you that wish to make public comment. At the appropriate time, the Planning Commission Chairman will call upon public comment from online. Currently, Ms. Turner, who's in the back, is going to ask you to put your name if you wish to have public comment in the chat room. So at the appropriate time, when the chairman opens up that, we can recognize by name.
Thank you. Okay, other public comment?
I'm going to be very, very short. My name is Deborah Rector, and I live, our property is right across Old Sparks Road, where the kennel, the Park Foundation was put their kennel. And my husband and I talked about this since we found out about it. And we came to the conclusion that we don't have any problems with them putting the kennel there. We believe they're going to be very good neighbors, and we do believe that they are going to try to mitigate the noise as best they can. And I do have to say, we have two little dogs of our own. They're house dogs. They're in the house mostly. But when they go outside, they bark. And I hear all of the neighbors' dogs barking too. They get loud, and then they stop. So I don't think that the Park Foundation dogs would be any different. Like I said, they bark, they stop, and that's it. That's all I have to say, but we are behind the Park Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Other public comment?
Members of the committee, Mr. Chairman, I'm Andy Gayhart. I was here a couple months ago. I'll try to keep it brief. My family, we own the property that's just west of the subject property that's with the proposed kennel, and we're bordered on the west by Fort Chop Road. And I guess we want to hear something you hadn't heard before. I hope this is it. Probably is. But it's sort of a macro view of what this whole thing is about. The way I see it, it's property rights, government regulation. And we all should have the right to have peaceful enjoyment of our property. And peaceful enjoyment doesn't mean it's all peaceful in the country. It just means we should be allowed to do with our property what we want to do with our property without other people infringing upon us. Okay? Peaceful enjoyment is different. If you own a lot in town and you want to run a a gas station, then you can enjoy it if you're able to have a gas station. In the rural community in this area, Madison, Fordsville, from the folks who are here in front today, peaceful enjoyment is quiet. Just country noises, nothing else. If you live in the city, the idea of peaceful enjoyment is different, right? Because you have different noises and expectations that you would expect when you engage in living in the city versus living in the country. But with that being said, property owners have no right or ability to demand that the conditions surrounding their property should never change, because everything changes, right? Life's a transition, you know? Culpeper's not like what it used to be before, and in Madison, you're a little bit different, but not as so much as in Culpeper, but change is inevitable, and that's where government comes in, and that's what you all are, obviously. And it is a thankless job what you do, and I appreciate what you do, I really do. you must do it for love of community, because I'm sure it doesn't pay very much. But your job is to regulate, and your responsibility is to take care of the citizen, individual citizen, but but the whole body of the citizens, the citizenry. There we go, I can say it. So with that said, we have to go ahead and look what we have before us, and it's kind of a big deal to everybody in here. So you all, as a governing body, are being asked to, to grant this special use permit to allow a large kennel pursuant to section 14.4-1 of the Madison Code. So you all have to do the analysis, right? That's why you get elected or appointed, they trust you all to make the analysis. The first analysis with this proposal by Hart is, what's the public good? Because you have to consider the public. Is it a park? Is it a park or something that would be of greater public use, like a park? I had some examples here. Like a library, or it's a public animal shelter. The quick answer to what is the public benefit of this to Madison, to all the citizens of Madison, is there really is no public benefit, right? It's just not. And we've heard over and over, the organization's a good organization, but it's not benefiting Madison. So then you go, so if it's not a public benefit that should beat out the greater good of the private citizens, what's the private benefit? Well, there really is no private benefit. I mean, if it's like a brewery, I mean, some people like that. You look at, we have one just over the hill over there. That's a private benefit to citizens of Madison. Is it a park, a ropes course? Is it a retreat? Does it provide any private benefit for the citizens of your county? And the answer again is no, it really doesn't. So what you get down to, really, when you boil it down, Hart is asking for peaceful enjoyment of their property, because they bought it and they own it, right? And for them to get peaceful enjoyment of their property, they need to build a shelter, okay? So we've excluded private and public benefit. Should they be allowed their peaceful enjoyment of their property? That's why they bought it. And you have to compare that to the other folks, whether or not their peaceful enjoyment is less important. And I don't think it is. It's like that planes, trains, and automobiles. If you move somewhere near an airport, right, you can't complain about the airplanes. If you're near a train station, you can't complain about the trains. These folks were already there, okay? They had a certain expectation with the quality of life they were living to peacefully enjoy their property. And I would just submit that this project is being proposed by Hart. My family, we would ask that you all just turn it down just for the reasons I've stated. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
James Ford, I live on Waylands Mill Road, representing also my wife, Mary Ann, who's not here with me. I would like to just address a couple of things. I try not to repeat too much of what's already been said, but I think that it sounds like the principal issue here is the impact on the quality of the neighborhood and what the neighborhood was before this was done here. And I think there's two aspects of it. One is going to be aesthetic, and the second is going to be noise. And I would say that if there was a need for Madison County to have one of these facilities, and we already have a kennel, right, presumably, and from what I understand, it's not even at capacity. Then there may not even be a need for this type of thing. And secondly, if you are going to have it, put it in a place where it's not going to be essentially a public nuisance for the people living in the neighborhood that we're in, because that's what it's going to be. So take that into consideration. The other thing I would ask is that, and I think someone mentioned this before, but this one bears repeating, and that is all of you up here, or any of you that are going to be making the final decision on this, put this in your backyard, okay? And if you feel it's gonna be okay in your backyard, that's one thing. But if you want no part of this, then you better consider that we want no part of this either, okay? So, yeah, we're two different parts of Madison County. You're somewhere else, we're here, we're gonna feel it, you're not gonna feel it, period. We talked about evaluating decibels, talked about noise a lot. And I would say, the other thing that kind of comes up is, sort of wishy-washy as to what's gonna happen with the facility. Okay, so we're gonna start out with a temporary that's going to have, presumably house as many animals as they're gonna house in a permanent, and there's not gonna be any noise abatement, so that's gonna be an absolute, it's gonna be a very lot operation. And then there's also back and forth on whether we're gonna expand or not. We don't know, we may use one of the other buildings on there for this. So if you're gonna make a decision on it, make that decision now. You're not gonna it's not gonna go beyond what it is now, or what you approve or don't approve. And it's not gonna be at their discretion to keep coming back on this. This is the second time they've come before the board, and it was denied the first time, and now we're here a second time. So if it does get approved tonight, so the citizens, the majority of which live in this neighborhood, don't want this, clearly do not want this, and do not want our lives disrupted. Do we get another chance to come to the board and make our case again with more scientific data or whatever it is? And hopefully not too much more of that. So, the other thing that I've been to most of the meetings except for the first one, and it's not clear how the notice was done with the citizens. I never heard a thing about it until one of my neighbors made me aware of it, and it certainly wasn't Hart that made me aware of it, and it certainly wasn't the Board of Supervisors or the Planning Commission. So all of a sudden, we're here having to defend this or fight against this new facility, but we were in it. But it wasn't. It doesn't sound like it was properly vetted. It sounds like, and I don't know what the circumstances were, but I know there was one a person on the Planning Commission who's no longer here, who had a lot to do with this, and he was receiving a lot of comments from people. And I don't know whether his disappearance or his resignation has anything to do with this particular item. I don't know. I don't know what the procedures were, whether they were done right or not, whether the notifications were put in place and done. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened there, but something is a little strange there for me. Talked about decibels. Talked about two SUPs. And, and I like, or my wife and I like many of the people here, like Mr. Yagi had mentioned. We're here for, we're coming here for our retirement years. We built a nice house up on 775. Plan to live our lives out here and have a relatively peaceful existence. Put a lot of money into it, and life savings are a good part of it. And this puts a little bit of a cloud over it. And so if Hart is gonna, kind of going back to the earlier point, if Hart is going to put this facility somewhere, put it in an area that's maybe more industrial, more suitable for this type of application. And then also consider whether it's in the best interest of Madison County and certainly in the neighborhood that this is affecting, most of which have voted against this or gone against this. And I'd also, I don't even know if it's possible, I'd love to see a transcript of all the correspondence leading up to the decision to bring this before the board. You know, just to kind of inspect it. I'd be interested in hearing about how all this happened. Like I said, being a little bit of a shock to me that this did happen, and I didn't even know about it till it was, you know, so far down the road. And let's see. There might be one more statement, maybe one, maybe not. And then the other thing is, if the board is going to make a decision that is against the public interest, that being that of the neighborhood, okay, then, okay, a year from now, 2 years from now, what, you know, some other neighborhood, maybe our neighborhood again, who knows? What are they going to allow to happen then, okay, with the right nudging or whatever? So take that into consideration. If this kind of thing is allowed now, what's going to happen in the future? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman, do you want to go to online?
Yeah, it looks like we should be able to.
And to do that, if it's okay with you, sir, Kim, hopefully folks by now, if you're online, you wish to make public comment, I think the chairman said at the beginning of the meeting, 3 minutes or something to that effect, but if you're online, please put your name in the chat box. Mr. Chairman, if you're fine with it, Ms. Turner can let you know the name that she has if you want to call them. And at that time, if you're online, if your name is called, please unmute. If your name is not called, please stay muted. Kim, who do we have first?
We have Daniela Storon. Sorry if I said that wrong. She's ready to go first.
Please
Okay.
proceed, Ms. Boron.
Hi, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes,
ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Danielle Storen. I have the house at 504 Old Sparks Road that my aunt is currently residing in. I agree with all the comments that you heard today, obviously, from many of the neighbors, particularly concerns about falling property values as well as the ability to even make a sale at lower properties when, especially for our property, literally have to drive past the kennel to make it to our property to view it. So even outside of those concerns, I have some questions that I would like answered. So just to give you a little bit of background, I own a defense contracting company. I am also a member of the board of directors of the U.S. Space Force Association, which is a 501c3 dedicated to supporting the U.S. Space Force. I serve as treasurer, as member of the board. I'm also the chief financial officer for 501c3. So to say a 501c3 is maybe a bit of an understatement in terms of financials. My questions revolve around what assurances we have that HART has the money to carry out this construction. My concern is they might build this temporary facility. And I heard that the lady, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch her name, I believe it was Patricia from HART, speak about, they need 2 years to build it. Well, does that mean for 2 years they're in a temporary facility, but then if they lose funding, it's going to be 3 years or 4 years or 5 years before they can move into the noise reduction kennel? For most companies, you have to have letters that show the government that you're capable of carrying out what you say you're able to carry out. I'd like to see letters from their bank saying that they are in good standing, that they have enough money to complete this. I think that for me is the biggest risk looking at this. They are going to build a temporary facility. They will never be able to fund the larger facility. That donor money comes and goes, as I have discovered, as a 501c3. And so I guess my question for HART is, what assurances can you give us that the project will be completed and to the specifications provided by the sound engineers that developed those plans? I also have concerns about the length of time that dogs will be in those temporary facilities. None of that has been addressed since we have been in this meeting, at least tonight. And like many of the others, I did not know about previous meetings, or I would have joined online as I did this evening. But I guess how many dogs are they going to put in a temporary facility? Those dogs are going to be bothered by construction going on that site as well. So the noise between the dogs and the construction for 2 years, as she quoted earlier, possibly more, depending on funding and construction timelines. Does that mean we're going to have both dogs and construction workers, just creating a nuisance, as the gentleman called it earlier? So those are the things that I had wanted to raise this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else online?
No one else has placed their name in the chat.
No one else there? Okay. Any other public comment? All right, Patricia, said you'd like to make some more comment?
Rebuttal comments for everybody. First of all, the temporary kennel will be limited to 15 dogs. We're very comfortable with having a 2-year limit to build the kennel. I guess with the quick ones out of the way. We have well over $500,000 in the bag that we could, to get started on the construction. In addition, we've got a letter from our bank that they would fund the rest of it. In addition to, we have commitments from donors to donate some money in the hundreds of thousands. So financially, we're not going to be a problem in building the kennel. And we can provide, if the county requests that, but give us a 2-year limit. You kick us out if we don't do it, then I don't know where the risk is there. So the temporary kennel, it'll be temporary, it'll be 15 dogs. Mary Lou will be living on site. Bear and Christine will be living on site. If there's noise issues with those 15 dogs, they can be inside the building most of the time, so it can be regulated by behavior, by addressing it. So again, I don't see the big risk. There will be opaque fencing around it so they don't see what's going on, so they don't get triggered so often. Now, the need for the opaque fence was from our original design of the permanent kennel. I'm very comfortable, and I would really much prefer put fencing that's not opaque around the new building. The new building will look like a barn. It'll fit right in the community as if we had a big horse stable where kids are riding their horses inside. We can put the crisscross and everything. We'll make it match the other barns on the property, so you can make it look like what you want to. We can even put horse-type fencing around it and put mesh wire, just like people do in their backyards. You can make it look like it's a horse farm. The beauty of having a contractor come in and build it for us, we can make it look whatever you want to. So we intend to blend with the neighborhood. The definitions of kennels and all that stuff, we will not be bringing stray animals into our facility. If they're stray animals like anybody else, we'll call the shelter. If the shelter needs help, then we'll help them, but we are not going to be required to be open to the public. We will not have a big sign saying that we are Heart Homeless Animal Rescue Team. We'll have one on the building out of sight of the road, just because, you want to make it look pretty in the front, but there's already a dog kennel not too far from our property, probably a reasonable surrogate for the kind of noise that Mr. Yagi would hear from our property or any of the other neighbors. And I've been out to the property a few times during the warm weather, and I have heard the dogs from the Applewood kennel bark. And when I said I heard them, I could identify their barking. It was by no means a terrible noise that bothered me. I was like, oh yeah, I can actually hear them. So it took me a while to even notice it. And I don't think I've ever been in Madison County where I didn't hear dogs barking. And Mr. Yagi's long presentation, don't want to pick on a particular person, but I think it's very rich that he's concerned about his peace and quiet when he installs a noise-making machine when he's not there to scare the bears away. and we heard it ourselves. It was gunfire and dogs barking. And so this peace and quiet of the neighborhood, I mean, our intention is not to turn dog barking noises on to anytime there's motion. Our intention is to minimize it. We totally redesigned the kennel. It'll cost us more money, but I'm actually much happier with the new design. The dogs will not be outside. They'll be in the building. Maybe some noise can escape the building. My architect has been texting me. He says he has no problem with building the kennel, the 6-inch thing that the consultant was doing. So most of those recommendations are not a problem. The only problems were like the separate air handling. So our intention is to build it with as much as we can for the internal sounds, but the design itself should mitigate most of the external sounds. And even if we're wrong and that there is more noises, they still have the ability to let us know, and then we will regulate how many dogs are outside. So, you know, the original plan was for them to be outside and we'll bring them in if there's noise. Now the plan is there shouldn't be much noise at all, and if there is, we still have the ability to bring them in and not have them all out at once. So I would like to amend what's approved and say we're not going to have opaque fencing around the main kennel. We'll have a security fence around. We'll make it look as aesthetically pleasing to match the natural, like, you know, some sort of wood poles and then the almost invisible wire fencing that you can put behind it. You know, we may have occasionally dogs playing out there, but a couple of dogs running around the yard is not the sound problem. Let's see. Concerned about the property values, like I said, there's already a dog kennel right around the corner. Right down the street from it, there's this HVAC business. I see a bunch of big trucks out there and junk out in the yard. So this, you know, there's nobody stopping that from happening. So I don't know why a large barn in our property is going to affect the property value. We don't take strays. And, you know, there's hunting dogs out here. They may not be the loudest dogs, but the hunting, you know, they're allowed to run free, and so the neighborhood will be hearing it. Like I said, I've never been here and not heard a dog bark. Definition of a kennel. You guys picked a few words in there, but it says, for the purpose of breeding, sale, training, boarding, grooming, sporting purpose. There, you know, there's lots of definitions, lots of different things. You don't have to do every single one of those to be considered a kennel. So I don't know why this wouldn't be called a kennel. It's not, like I said, we're not going to be bringing in strays. So I'm not sure where that's even a problem. Public interest, we've already said we're planning to hire locally. We're going to have to hire drivers to drive our vans to where, you know, to go pick up dogs or to whatever. We're going to hire people to come in. We will be paying taxes like everybody else. And I don't see how all of our neighbors are providing a benefit to the community either. I mean, we are there, we bought a piece of property, we probably enhanced your property values because we probably overpaid for the property, but we fell in love with it and we had the money to buy it. We, you know, as soon as we saw it come on the market, we paid what they asked. So, I mean, that in itself, if it's 3 times what it last sold for, well, you know what, you all benefited from that. And property values don't go down, they just keep going up, unless a big crisis happens. So you've got a comp there that'll help you sell your property for more. Like I said, and I don't know why anybody driving through the neighborhood would know that we have a dog kennel there. Oh, and our adoption fee, so we're not trying to keep poor people from having dogs. We want to put dogs in homes of people that can afford to have the dogs. We get returns when they say, oh, my dog broke his leg, I can't afford the fee. You know, sometimes we'll actually help them if we feel that they can afford the dog, but, you know, they do come back to us because they can't afford it. So the purpose of an adoption fee, first of all, is to offset our costs, but also to make sure that people can afford to have a dog. And our fees are in line with rescues all over Virginia. You know, if people really don't have the money and they complain about our fee, they're always welcome to go to the local shelters that are subsidized by the county. And, oh, yeah, and yeah, so as for the, you know, for the public benefit is, it's not just helping the shelter. We will help the shelter. Part of it is helping the shelter find homes for dogs that maybe they can't find the kind of homes that this dog would need in the area. So we have a far reach. So we're taking homeless dogs from Virginia and finding homes all over the place for them. If grandma goes into the hospital and she's got 10 cats and you're allergic to cats, they call us, say, hey, grandma's going to the hospital, can you take my 10 cats? And we say, sure, bring them on over and we'll take the 10 cats. The whole thing about expanding, we do not intend to expand. 50 dogs really is the limit. We don't want to be warehousing dogs. We want a temporary place to give us the flexibility to say yes to the dogs in need and not let them be euthanized in the shelter because we couldn't speak fast enough. I had a train of thought and I just lost it. About coming back we are building the temporary kennel. It's gonna cost us, I think it's $20,000 or $30,000. It's a lot of money. We're gonna put insulation and everything in there, heating and air conditioning. So if we find that there is a need for, and that can be within the 25 cats that we agreed to have, we could use that as a cat sanctuary. It would be a good purpose for the building. And if not, we could just use it for storage. But that was just a suggestion I was making, that we might be a good repurpose for it. And we would not exceed the numbers we've agreed to without coming back and saying, this is a new need, this is what we'd like to do, is it okay? One thing Hart is we are very much rule followers, and we follow the rules, and we do what's right for the community, for the animals, and for ourselves.
Thank you. All right, one last time, any other public comment?
Just one quick rebuttal. Not as long as the last one, but people keep talking about this bear device that I've had. $21 on Amazon from China. It is solar. So yesterday, I did a test. And I have 3 witnesses there that I did this test. We set one of them off. They had a phone there. I took my phone to 504, our neighbor's house, our guest house, up to the front gate, and then also to Hart. Just to show you that I'm not lying. You can hear you can hear the neighbor's dog there. But the point is, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but I will leave this phone and send these files to anyone. You cannot hear this thing at the gate, our gate, 0, and I have video evidence to prove it with audio, and you definitely can't see it then up 75 yards further away at the entrance at Hart. So these people who keep on, the only person I'm certain that has heard it is Kylie, because she was the one that was watering my hummingbird feeders. And so when she would go there, but, both. And we did it for 5 minutes straight at each one of the locations. You could hear it a little bit at our guest house. 0 guns, 0 dogs at the gate, 0 guns, 0 dogs. And I'm willing to let you hear this. And I'll tell you what, I'll let anybody, anytime come and do the test. But it's a bunch of malarkey.
Thank you, sir.
But I will also not be using these again, because even if there's a perception that somebody can hear it, it's gone.
Okay, any other public comment?
I got just 1 minute, okay? 4 points. In reference to the public notification, I reached out to other neighbors
Please
nearby that were not
identify
immediate-
yourself, please.
Oh, I'm Thomas Carney, and I'm on Waylands Mill Road, across from the kennel, in visual distance to the proposed site. I reached out to many neighbors that were not immediately adjacent to the property over the last 2 days. None of them had heard about this, and all of them were against it. Of the 24 parcels directly surrounding the project, on that map you'll see, 21 of the 24 are adamantly against it. 2 are neutral. Only 1, the rectors who spoke tonight, are for it. The SUP specifies that only Mr. Yagi will have that phone number to call to complain. Every one of the neighbors, it should be public knowledge what that 800 number is, that we can all call and complain. Finally, all remedies for the neighbors to determine excessive barking, which used to be 10 minutes on the January 17th sub, but now that has been removed. The whole notification process for neighbors has been removed. The administrator, there's no policy or no procedures for us to call somebody and say, these dogs are barking all night, all day. So that's an issue.
Thank you. Okay.
Chairman, Danielle said something in the comment. I wasn't sure if you wanted people to go more than once, so I just wanted to touch base.
Yeah, by all means, let's,
Okay, so she said, people keep saying that they will hear a dog barking. There's a major difference between a singular dog and 50 dogs and unlimited puppies.
okay, thank you. All right, any other public comment? If not, any further discussion? Yes, Pete?
I want to ask Mr. Weekly a question. I see here in number 2, sir, that they can have 50 dogs, but they could also have 50 puppies, because if they're under 6 months old, they don't count toward the 50 dogs. Is that correct?
Let me take a quick look. I would agree with that statement, yes.
So it could be 50 dogs and 50 puppies in there.
To your comment, it just specifies, it differentiates between puppies, as you stated, sir, by age under 6 months or under 3 months. Doesn't have a number, but it does have that it does not count towards the 50 and 25. And only specifies what would be not to exceed in temporary kennel, which is in this last part, for cats and dogs. So to your point, sir, no number reference to 3 month of age or 6 month of age.
Thank you.
Those would only have to, thank you, sir, would have to remain indoors. That's the only reference.
Okay, any other comment?
I'd like to ask where the puppies might be being kept. If you had 50, you got 50 runs, and would they go into temporary?
Separate, we built in several puppy rooms, and we don't want to have a limit, because we can have a litter of, we had 2, this year we had 2 litters of 12 puppies. So it's 24 puppies. It's 2 litters, 2 rooms, door will be closed, you're not going to hear them, except for when the door is open. And, you know, a lot of all the discussion and noise was when we were having outdoor kennels. So even now, they'll be in the courtyard, the adult dogs, and the puppies will be inside. And we had an expert talking about what kind of walls we have to have, and we promise we will. We commit to it. If you want to put it on there, what his specification of the external walls are, we will commit to that. That part I know we can commit to.
Okay, other comments,
I've got one
discussion?
from Mr. Weekly.
Yes, sir, yeah.
So if approved, do we have anything in place? Are we supposed to be doing we're going to be doing a site plan for the permanent facility? Are we going to they're going to be building a temporary facility? Are we going to need to do a site plan for that?
So
I thought they were going to be using the existing.
I
building.
believe there is
Existing
there is an existing building. Now, permits would have to be pulled, I heard lighting, heating, and air, but essentially, no, that's an existing building. If there's some alterations, there may be some plans that are required, but if they're just putting heating and air, that would be required a building permit. So, condition number 12, I have on the screen, that is specific to the official site plan, which would be the permanent facility.
I thought that's what has been said, but I thought I heard her say that they were going to build one
No,
for
we're just
$20,000 or
gonna-
$30,000.
No, it's going to cost us that much to modify the building.
Modify,
Because we're
okay.
using the fancy
Okay.
noise canceling stuff in the walls and kenneling and the fencing.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Please, we've done public comment. You will have another chance. The Board of Supervisors will hear this.
Just wanted to comment on that.
Yes, sir.
In regards to the definitions, regarding kennels and shelters and the like. So you've got two different things going on statutorily. One is you've got your state code and then you've got your county zoning. So 3.2 of the state code regulates agriculture, animal care, and food. The chapter with the kennel, which is 65, and animal shelter definitions concerning care for domestic animals, addressing how they're kept, cared for, transported, and sold. So that's in 3.2. The word kennel also appears twice in the Virginia code, but that's under 18.2, which is the criminal code. The reason I bring that up is because in the criminal code, it's clear that that use the word kennel has nothing to do with the definition under 3.2. So why does that matter? It means that there's not an overarching controlling definition of code.
Is your mic on, Danny?
No.
It is.
All right, turn his mic up.
I'll switch to this one if that's better, sorry. So the Madison County definition of kennel is broader than that one. It would also include animal shelters as defined by the state code. More to the point, it would include Hart's proposed facility. So under the county zoning powers, it can regulate land uses to include kennels, these sorts of facilities. So the proposed use by Hart is contemplated by our code, our zoning ordinance, by special use permit, which would be allowed A1 if permitted by the Board of Supervisors. An ordinance cannot conflict with state law, but if the zoning ordinance and state statute can be harmonized, they should, rather than nullifying anything. Additionally, zoning ordinances are presumed reasonable under state law. So the important questions here, does the Hart shelter fall under our ordinance's definition? Yes. Is the county allowed to regulate such use in its zoning ordinances? Yes. And is our zoning ordinance somehow rendered invalid by state code? No. So the overarching question here is not whether or not it can be done, it's the question of whether it should be permitted under the zoning ordinance.
Any other discussion, comment? Yes.
Got some
Nathan.
general comments. I rode out there today. I was pretty familiar with the area anyway, but and everybody's got a story of some neighbor that likes to shoot guns at 6 a.m. or the cannon over on Ellie Road or all sorts of different stuff. But everybody knows about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, noise is what it is, and it's not ideal. But when I rode out there, I saw some things that I expected and some I didn't. One, really, when I was on Old Sparks Drive or Road, it seemed to me the only properties that really had a view of the proposed location of this shelter was the Rectors across the street, which seem to be in favor, and possibly the Stumps over at the Applewood Kennel. And that was the other thing I noticed, and that's not to say that somebody else doesn't have a view of it, but that's the way it appeared to me. The other thing I noticed was there was some commercial activity, one being the Applewood Kennel, and I'm sure that was a special use permit at some point a little while back.
It's, that
And
permit, that permit was carried with the land from the prior owner. for
I'm
clarity.
just talking. And then I've really I'm not totally sure on how the at-home contracting business works, because it's not really technically maybe a permitted right in A1, or defined as like a home business. So that it is a little gray in there, but you know, it's all A1 property, there's multiple commercial things within a quarter mile of this proposed location. 30,000-foot view. I mean, I think it could fit right in with the land and be an extreme minimal impact, be a minimal benefit to the county as well, but I just don't see a whole lot here. I was not a fan of the ugly baffled fence. I'm glad you brought up, just like a clear view, welded wire or something, agricultural looking. The building can follow suit with that if it were to be approved at some point. I'm not a big fan of the temporary shelter and the vagueness of that. You guys have been in business a long time at heart, 30 years or something about. I mean, you guys have been without this. I don't think you need to rush the temporary shelter and possibly sort of start out in the neighborhood on a bad note, if it were approved. And again, the driveway seems to be kind of right at the mouth of Old Sparks and Wayland's Mill. Old Sparks is a very tiny road. It's not suitable for really passing anybody in any condition, I don't think. But there's plenty of roads like that. But again, I would elect to take that. It's like 25 feet on Old Sparks, it seems like, and there's the driveway off of the Wayland's Mill. I would be in favor of that if I were developing it. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Yes.
Sure, I'd like to thank each of you all for your comments and being here tonight to testify and being at prior meetings and for your emails. And we'd like to do one thing. A number of you have said whatever we vote to approve. We don't vote to approve anything at this body. We are merely advisory. And all we can do is try to complete our staff work, a term I'm sure you're aware with, and to the best of our ability, noting our research, advise the board as to what our recommendation would be. But we don't make a decision. That being said, I mean, the property is zoned A1. The neighbors are in property that's zoned A1. Hart's in favor of putting a shelter in, which requires this board to find that the use is suitable for a special use permit. And so it comes down to a property rights issue. And the way I see it, Hart wants you to give up some of your property rights so that they can gain a property right that's not by right, if you follow me. And there have been two primary concerns. Number one, the noise, and number two, the potential fall in property values. Regarding the noise, we've heard arguments that try to make an equivalence of barking dogs in a kennel to the noise that we hear in the country. So we have country noises. Guns are one of them. I kind of like hearing guns. And there are other country noises that are probably not pleasing to us all. For example, when a calf is being weaned, that 45 to 60 days is not pleasant to hear, but it's a country sound. My neighbor's dog's barking, protecting the flock at night. Don't like it? It's a country sound. But you talked about the NIMBY, not in my backyard. Well, I happen to have had a kennel in my backyard. It was built in the dead of night without a permit. The house was. The kennel was then open without a permit. So we hear the cacophony of sounds of that kennel all night long. Those dogs had a bucolic view of our county, very much what we're all here to enjoy. They get to see the occasional bobcat, geese, deer, bear. But I'm sure it's a butterfly taking off in Honduras that set them off. And it kept them off 24/365. I didn't like it. My wife, I think, if there's anybody that's deaf, it's me. The only background I've had with sound is working recording engineers in Nashville and sleeping under big guns in Southeast Asia, neither of which really did me any favors, but I could still hear those bloody dogs all night long and didn't like it. So I would come to the point that with the adverse effect on property values, I haven't heard that quantified. I haven't seen studies that quantify it. I know from my personal view, I wouldn't want to be. I'd move on and look somewhere else. I just wouldn't want it in my neighborhood or a neighborhood I was seeking to live in. And let's see. The last point is that one that's going to affect all the neighbors and all the citizens of Madison. And that's the fact that HART is a 501c3 organization under the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended. The Virginia state tax law pretty much piggybacks on federal law. The Virginia Code section at 58.1.3609 exempts animal shelters of the nature accorded exemption under 501c3 to be exempt from property taxes, both real and personal. So in a year that we're looking at significant budget constraints, to eliminate this property from the tax and the buildings on it from the future tax base, giving them pretty much a free ride, that would affect all of us. And for those reasons, my vote on an advisory basis would be to deny the application.
Okay. Any other discussion or comment?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that case number SU-03-24-01 not be recommended to the board for approval.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. I guess we should probably vote by show of hands. All in favor of the motion not to approve? Okay, those opposed? Okay. All right. Can we get a opposite motion for our recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation that case number SU-03-24-01 be recommended to the board for approval, making a condition amendment to number 4, making the completion date of March 1st, 2026.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, I don't think we do, but are there any other items that need to be brought before the planning commission?
Not tonight.
Okay, and I hear a motion for adjournment of the planning commission. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break for just a couple of minutes and let everybody stretch the legs, and then we'll come into session.
Oh, well.
Thank you. You motion to adjourn?
Who was the second to adjourn?
Okay.
I didn't mean.
No, I. Road with me and tractors. You got money.
Like, you know, I mean, like what happened down by Jim, we put the siding and the roofing and gutter and all on it. So, you know, we didn't know the contractor called, gave him a price and went and did it. And then, you know, I'm like, you know, I didn't know.
You don't have to
that it
go
had
and find out.
They're one of the three that voted to put it in their yard.
He's officiating, so you might have a religious exemption. Yeah,
Not for summer camp. Hey.
We have an option.
Stretching my legs, not exactly what I need to do, but I need to do. I suspect so, yeah.
That'll work.
Months out, but 2 weeks is.
My buddy worked at the county house. Yeah, he was, I got the.
All right, folks.
Hey,
Excuse me.
Like they do in the theater.
Hey, we're going to start here in just a moment. Everybody take a seat, please.
You have fun? Man, I love this.
All right, thank you. I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors to order. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. Anybody have anything we need to add to the agenda this evening?
No, sir.
What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, same sign. We're going to do public comment 3 times during our session. General public comment. Does anybody have any general public comment? Any general public comment? All right, let's move into the case. What? No, we're going to do, it's coming very shortly. Yes, ma'am. We'll do a couple more. Case number SU-03-24-01, Mrs. Patricia Kurowski, President of the Board of Directors for the Homeless Animal Rescue Team, Inc., HART, has applied for a special use permit to construct and operate an animal rescue kennel on an A1 agricultural zoned lot. In the A1 zoning district, a kennel is allowed by SUP. The subject lot is 35 acres and contains 2 existing dwellings. The proposed kennel structure would not exceed 10,000 square feet of area under roof and shelter no more than 50 dogs and 25 cats at any given time. If approved, a temporary kennel would be established utilizing the lot's existing structures or potential to temporary structures in accordance with the Uniform Statewide Building Code, USBC. In addition, the SUP would run with the applicant and therefore be non-transferable or assignable. The subject property contains 2 postal addresses, 18 and 310 Old Sparks Road, Culpeper, Virginia, and is identified on Madison County's tax maps as 43-5. We do have conditions. Number 1, the SUP shall run with the applicant and shall not be transferable or assignable. Number 2, at any given time on the subject site lot, the total number of dogs sheltered in the permanent kennel facility shall not exceed 50, and the total number of cats sheltered shall not exceed 25. Dogs and cats sheltered in the permanent kennel facility under 6 months of age and under 3 months of age respectively shall be required to remain indoors and shall not be considered counted against the total number of allowable dogs and cats on the site and lot. The total number of dogs sheltered during operations of the temporary kennel facility shall not exceed 15, and the total number of cats sheltered shall not exceed 25. Both the permanent and temporary kennel facilities shall not house more than 50 dogs combined. Number 3, the kennel shall comply with all regulations and requirements as promulgated by the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Science. Number 4, the permanent kennel structure shall not exceed 10,000 square feet in floor area under roof, excluding the center courtyard, and the permanent kennel facility shall be constructed on or before March 1st, 2025. This permanent kennel facility shall be constructed in conformance with the Hart Rescue Kennel design attached to the report as Exhibit A. The kennel design shall contain 2 interior open-air walled courtyards which shall serve as outdoor run areas and play areas for dogs. The permanent kennel's interior walls and interior courtyard walls shall utilize resilient channel soundproofing or a similar construction technique measure as a mechanism to increase interior soundproofing. Prior to the issuance of the building permits for the permanent kennel structure, the proposed interior soundproofing techniques and materials shall be approved by the county building official. Number 5, all animals shall be inside the kennel facility on before 8 p.m. and shall be allowed outside, shall not be allowed outside until 7 a.m. or after daily. An animal inside the facility shall not have access to an outdoor run or an outdoor interior courtyard. As needed, a single leash dog may be walked outside of these hours. Number 6, Hart shall exclusively maintain the 0.3 miles or 1,712 feet portion of the private road known as Old Sparks Road Drive from its intersection with Wayland's Mill Road, Route 618, to Hart's easternmost property line. As necessary, maintenance shall include but not be limited to grading gravel on Old Sparks Road. The roughly 0.3 mile portion of Old Sparks Drive shall be maintained to the road's current condition as of December 31st, 2023. See Exhibit B attached to the document for the visual showing the area of Old Sparks Lane that will be exclusively maintained by Hart. Number 7, Hart shall provide the current or succeeding owners of the adjoining property identified on Madison County tax map as 43-8 and 24- with a 24/7 on-site staff contact mobile phone number, provided a reasonable request is made with a minimum of 2-hour notice. A mutually agreed upon or agreeable time shall be established to remove dogs from the outside dog runs and placed inside the kennel facilities as requested by said adjoining property owner. Number 8, the permanent kennel facility shall be located on the subject lot as shown on Exhibit C. Attached to this document, the temporary kennel facility shall contain an exterior fence, and the fence shall be a minimum of 6 feet high, be covered in a semi-opaque sound-baffling material, and substantially conform with the visual examples attached to this document as Exhibit D. Number 9, the permanent kennel facility shall contain a bathroom and shall meet Virginia Department of Health requirements. Number 10, the temporary kennel facility shall be located on the subject lot as shown on Exhibit E attached to this document. The temporary kennel facility shall operate in compliance with all provisions of the conditions stated in the document. Existing or temporary structures utilized for the temporary kennel facility shall meet the requirements of the Virginia Uniform Statewide Building Code. Number 11, the county's zoning administrator or their designee may enter the subject property for site visits on any days between the hours of 8 to 5 p.m. to investigate potential noncompliance with the SUP conditions stated in the documents. The zoning administrator may also be accompanied by the county's animal control officer during a site visit. If a site visit results in evidence of noncompliance with the SUP conditions stated herein, a formal written report will be provided by the zoning administrator to Hart with corrective actions to be taken. Failure to adhere to the SUP conditions or take corrective actions to ameliorate potential violations may result in Hart's SUP being revoked in accordance with Section 15-2-2286 and Section 15.2-2204 of the Code of Virginia. Number 12, in accordance with the Madison County Site Plan Ordinance, prior to the issuance of building permits, an official site plan for the proposed permanent kennel shall be submitted to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and approved with modifications or denied by the Board of Supervisors. Failure to comply with any of the conditions, this is number 13, failure to comply with any of the conditions set forth in this document shall constitute a zoning violation and may result in legal actions necessary to revoke said SUP by Madison County Zoning Administrator. The only recommendations by the Planning Commission to the board was that the completion date be changed to 2026, 2026 instead of 2025. Mr. Weekly, anything to add to this?
No, sir, not to this application, just a reminder, and it's in your packet as well. There were several emails received in opposition that are in the packet.
And will be included in the official record.
Yes, sir, and that would include anything we received after. I know there was a bunch that came in well after this packet. We will properly put them in the record as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I heard one other possible change was number 8.
Yeah.
Talking about the semi-opaque, covered in semi-opaque sound baffling material.
I agree with that one. Is that one that we want to take up prior to going down the path or just on the
Sure.
recommendation?
Just on the recommendation, really, I guess.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, to
Please.
that,
Was
I believe
brought
the
up.
applicant offered that up.
Yeah.
So that may be something to Mr. Yow's point to address to the applicant.
Absolutely.
When we get to that point.
Anything to Mr. Weekly or Hannon Wright? All right, to the applicant. Anything to add, Ms. Kabrowski? Probably saying that wrong, I'm sorry. Would you like to address Mr. Yow's comment about the fencing? Or do you feel like you've sufficiently gone down that path? Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make the the fencing look like farm,
So you'd like to have the words semi-opaque removed?
I would remove that. That was really when we were gonna have dogs outside. They're gonna be within the building now, so there's no reason to have that anymore, and it would just make it look ugly and like a compound.
So the words "be covered in a semi-opaque sound baffling material." So it should read, "contain an exterior fence, and this fence shall be a minimum of 6 feet in height and substantially conform to the visual examples attached to this
I would
document."
remove that.
So anything between the commas.
I would,
Yeah.
I also think the applicant had stated, now, maybe word salad here, so please correct me, a more of a natural fencing, like referencing of a horse fencing, but with mesh wire like you see.
In backyards, yeah.
So you want to get rid, basically you want to get rid of the 6-foot deal?
No, it'll 6 foot.
All right.
Oh, it'll be
Just-
6 foot.
Well, it doesn't say that it's a chain, does it say it doesn't say chain link anywhere, so I think that's up to y'all's discretion. Just the removing of the opaque material is what you're referring to, correct?
Yeah, everything in between, after height,
Yeah,
be covered in semi-opaque sound baffling material. Take all that out.
there you go.
Because that's for the temporary.
There you
And we'll keep that to a minimum, so it's not so ugly.
go. All right, any other comments, questions, thoughts to Mrs. Krabrowski? Please, please, by all means, Jim.
I'm going to start off with saying this. First of all, we have to remove the altruistic component of this debate. I don't think you could find any person in the community or this county or this board that doesn't have compassion for abused and neglected animals. This has to be a rational, logical decision based on the law and based upon the community needs. And some of the things, I believe that most issues have been covered sufficiently and eloquently this evening, so I'm not going to beat them to death. But there's some numbers lacking, and I'm a numbers person, particularly with the challenging budget situation that we're facing in the county this year. But, Ms. Kurowski, did your organization do any type of economic impact analysis on how this facility would affect the county with regard to taxes, demand on county services, any multiplier or residual economic benefits to the county?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you. Now, how about traffic counts? I've seen different numbers for that, but what are your estimates as to what maximum or average daily traffic would be?
I'd be surprised if, there's, you know, because there'll be 2 families living on the property, so that was already happening. And for the vans, we'll have the vans, we send runs out twice a week tops, and to adoption days once. So that would be 6 runs. We have a large van, so we don't need to bring more than one. So it'll be a van, so 6 times van in, or 6 times in and out total is what we expect a week. I mean, of course, there's running to the vet, but it's really not all that different than, you know, regular folks living there. I was hoping to, I know a lot of farm vets will travel, so I was going to research if we can get a vet that would come to the facility so we don't have to do as many trips out.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have for you, and I'm just going to make some general comments. I don't see where this is going to benefit the county. We have an adequate facility now for dogs. It looks to me like, from what I've heard, that the major benefit is going to be to the most wealthiest counties in the United States, in Northern Virginia. And I just feel like they're trying to push their problems down on us. The other issue I have is that the tax revenues, any kind of projections are problematic in light of Mr. Smith's comments that as a nonprofit, you can apply for tax exempt status on this facility, so it would negate any revenue increase to the county. There's obviously nuisance issues, and I know that the noise argument's been presented both ways. There's going to be noise. And then my concern with the traffic count is it's probably going to end up being more than what you are estimating. But my biggest concern for that community is not as much, and quality of life is absolutely important. I know, as I mentioned in the previous meeting in the fall, I lived for 17 years next to a 20-dog kennel half a mile away, and they bark night and day for 17 years. So that can be a problem, but what really concerns me is that this facility is going to appropriate the property values of the people that live in that area. And I can't accept that. So in summary of my comments, I just declare my opposition to this special use permit, but thank you, ma'am.
Can I just add one? Everybody keeps comparing us to dog kennels that they've seen before, and those are indoor, outdoor, with chain link fence and nothing stopping the dogs from seeing and hearing everything, and it's 24 hours a day. We've already stated that they would not be in visible sight of anything outside of it, and it will not be 24 hours a day.
Other questions or comments to Mrs. Kurowski? Ms. Buchanan, please.
So, I did interview a more typical dog kennel who boards dogs, not far away, just outside of the Madison line. They have 30 dogs. They've been there for over 20 years. I boarded my dogs there. They've had perfect relationships with all their neighbors. They have homes that are closer to the kennel than what yours are to the homes located near you. I take it pretty seriously, all the things that Jim said and everybody else out here said. When I called her and talked to her and interviewed her, she just said that they have the same type of restrictions with hours when the dogs can be out and when they can be in. And if there is barking, it's limited to a few minutes, and they don't have the visual blockages that you're talking about for your kennel. Scripture was quoted here tonight, and one of the things, the Proverbs 12:10, kindness to animals is godly. In fact, caring for them is part of our purpose. So we're talking about, are we really helping the animals of Madison County, or are we helping animals in general? I think that's your mission. And whether they come from Northern Virginia or Southern Virginia or Tennessee or wherever they are, I also heard you say, one of the citizens here say, that would you do it in your backyard? And I can honestly say I would. I'd have the same fears that I hear everybody talk about here, but seeing how they're changing the architecture plans for the building, having them all interior, I just think that maybe putting up some more cedar trees, evergreens, might block some noise because it's pretty open up there. But I'm inclined to vote yes for this. So thank you.
Other comments? The only one I want to clarify, and I'm going to ask for Jonathan and then Hannon. The 501c3 does not exclude everybody that has a 501c3 from paying taxes. 501c3s can ask Madison County to be exempted from property taxes, of which, how many can you think of, Jonathan? I mean, I can think of what is it, Rapidan Baptist Camp that has one for their religious center.
Generally, it would be a religious center.
Yeah.
There are some educational institutions, but primarily religious centers.
And others have asked, and we have not wavered. There is another religious camp that is in the process of asking, but Madison County's never exempted 501c3s. Hannon, is that the right way to look at this?
So, Alan, is this working now?
Nope. You're sitting real close to him.
Right now, please. How's that?
No.
No? Okay, great.
So most nonprofits have to pay real estate taxes. There are exemptions which are created specifically by the state code. There is one, I guess your question is going to produce a question for me, which is to the applicant, Ms. Patricia. Do you guys qualify as an SPCA?
No, and I don't, and we've already paid property taxes. We weren't even aware there was a possibility, so I'll commit, we will not ask to waive our property taxes even if we can.
Well, I don't know that we can, legally, we can agree to that. I appreciate, I'm sure everyone appreciates the offer. But I don't.
We've already paid it, I know that.
The exemption, as I read the code, I've not done a ton of research into this, is the exemption is for qualifying SPCA's.
Thank you, Hannah. All right, other comments or questions for the applicant? All right, to the public. Who has public comment? Please.
Again, my name is Rex Edwards. I'm an attorney out of Culpeper. I'm here representing some of the local landowners. Obviously, y'all paid close attention. I will not reiterate the comments I made. I would ask y'all to adopt those comments as having been made in this public hearing and referring specifically to those I made in the Planning Commission hearing. Just two things that prompted me to return to the microphone. One is to just comment on Mr. Wright's comment about the definition of kennel in the Madison Code. Not my intention, and I hoped I had expressed it earlier. I didn't provide the Planning Commission and the board with copies of the state code to try to confuse and say that somehow the state code definition preempts the Madison Code. I think I went out of my way to say that was just illustrative of the distinction between shelters and kennels. But if you look at the kennel definition, which is controlling under the Madison ordinance, you can only come to the conclusion that this is a kennel if you make a determination that the animals that leave the shelter are for sale. I think that's pretty clear if you look at the definition. And I would submit to you that that's not clear, because also in your packet, and again, it's not controlling for the same purpose, if you look under the definitions, you start thinking, okay, what does it mean that they're for sale? And people go round and round and, on determining what does that mean from a legal standpoint. When you look at the definition of a dealer, it points out that, well, a dealer is somebody who in the regular course of business buys, sells, transfers. It uses the word sells, and then it goes down and it excludes any person whose primary purpose is to find permanent adoptive homes for companion animals. And that's clearly what we have here. My point is, these are unique animals. The Heart Shelter, in a legal sense, they're unique animals. When you pay your adoptive fee by their own admission, they don't call that a sales price. It's to cover their administrative fee. One of the things I don't think I've heard expressed here, but I don't think is contested by anyone, is that when one adopts an animal, dog or cat, from Heart, there's a contract, and when you pay your administrative fee, you haven't purchased that with freedom to then decide, I think I'll now in turn give it away to my daughter, or I'll in turn give it away to my cousin, or I'll just sell it to some third party. You're obligated to return it to Heart. So they're a different animal. It's not a sale, whereas if I like your dog and I come buy your dog, and 5 years later I want to sell it to my grandson or my daughter, I'm free to do that because that's what a sale is. So they're excluded under the state code from that definition of dealer, which includes people who sell animals, because they are a different animal. So it's up to you to determine whether or not they fall within your definition of a kennel. But your definition of a kennel, the language y'all chose to use indicated that everything that it does, housing, brooding, breeding, handling, they're all modified by the end language that it's for sale. And that's my point to y'all, is that under the applicant's own illustration of what they do, these are not animals for sale. They're not a dealer of animals. They are doing very reputable, altruistic work of finding home for these adoptive animals, and they recover their administrative fees through an adoptive fee. They don't sell animals. And the only thing I'll say, it just caught my ear when we were talking about this modification of the fencing, this baffling fencing. It's struck me as relatively casual that the applicant's representative would come here and say, after having submitted an application once that was denied, submitted an application a second time that had baffling fencing, and representing that this was going to be beneficial to the community, that now because it's convenient to take that out, she would characterize it as, well, if we had it in there, it would be ugly and the place would look like a compound. I think that's a direct quote from what she said 5 minutes ago. So it for the first time makes me really question how desperate is Heart to get their project done versus balancing being a good neighbor. Because if this whole time they thought that what they were proposing was ugly and was going to make the project look like a compound, then shame on them for having brought it. Thank you.
Other public comment?
Jim Ford again. I have a few comments, or comments, question. One I think is a big concern. I know there's one individual as part of the neighbor group who is against this and who lives fairly close to this proposed facility, who's got health problems. And this particular kennel being present every single day, going on and having to see this and having to stew over this, I worry about the health of that individual based on that, and potentially even some of the neighbors that are within eyeshot and earshot of this particular thing. So that shouldn't be that should be taken into consideration, because we're talking about the public good here, right? Secondly, I would like real quick the three gentlemen on the planning commission who voted to approve this to go on record now saying you would put this in your own backyard. Can you do that, Mr. Allen and Mr. Snyder?
They are adjourned.
Can you do that? Can you tell me that right now?
Yeah, this is not a question and answer.
Okay.
No, sir.
We can't
No.
go with that.
No, we cannot.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so put on the record that they couldn't answer that, they would not answer that question. And second, and the last question I have is, I think undoubtedly there's going to be an effect on property values. This is not going to look like it fits in as has been described. And I want to know who's going to compensate people for their lost property value. Is that going to be something that's going to come out of, is this something that someone's going to have to go after the county? In other words, if there's a way to document that something like this was approved, and it affected property value in a significant manner, honestly, if I had the ability, I'd file suit against the county. Because you guys are allowing it to be here, and you don't seem to have too much of a concern with the impact of this facility. And I'd say the planning commission also has a role in that too. So that's just my feeling. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Okay, my name is Lisa Kearney, and I live at 161 Waylands Mill Road. We are directly across from this property. And so I just want to, some of these things have been said before. Some of these things have been contested. And our attorney actually spoke about all the legal terms, so that's not something I'm able to speak to. But I would say, just real quickly, I did limit myself in time, so I timed myself, but I thought it was 3 to 5 minutes, so I'll speak quickly. Chairman Jackson, Vice Chairman Yowell, Mr. Jewett, Mr. Dawson, and Mr. Buchanan, all of you that sit there. Respectfully, I would like to offer the following comment on the proposed SUP before you this evening. I've heard valuable input from our shelter supporters. I've been a shelter supporter and an animal rights advocate my entire life. I've raised our children to adopt from shelters, and all of them have shelter dogs now. These are facts. This is part of what we've done. Also a fact, county shelters are in place in every jurisdiction to assist our citizens with housing unwanted pets. They are in county areas that are removed from established neighborhoods, private homes, and farms in efforts to isolate the animal noise and other undesirable effects that come from every animal shelter. Our shelter in Madison is one of these. In January, Madison County Shelter Control reported to you, the board, at the end of 2023, that there were 4 dogs and 4 cats in the Madison shelter. This is not a problem in Madison. The shelter is not at capacity. The same report showed that our Madison shelter relocated 1 dog to Heart, the company at hand, and 1 to PAL, another rescue organization. Now I have to ask you, if we set a precedent to allow an animal shelter on an agricultural zoned area this evening, are we going to offer another special use permit to PAL too? Because listen up, folks, the next one might be your home. And back in December 2023 at that meeting, Mr. Greg Cave, he's our Chief Animal Control Officer here in Madison, told us that the Madison shelter had total space for 25 dogs and 35 cats. The SUP before us will be larger in space and facility than our countywide shelter, which isn't even full. At the same time, Mr. Cave told the board that he would like to see the total number of animals decrease to see how things go. We haven't talked anything about that. And offered a personal comment on barking noise that he experienced with just 30 dogs on a friend's property, which is why he added that he's so big on location for shelters. Location, location, location. It's also a real estate term, okay? He said you have to find the right location for these kind of things, and he's our animal control officer. This is a man quoted in your meeting, at your board meeting, and this is what he said. He stated that the then cited location of the proposed shelter would help with noise mitigation as well as using fencing to protect escape onto the surrounding properties. Remember, Mr. Cave is the one to call to corral the bad actor dogs. So it makes sense that fencing would be one of his concerns. That was back in December, but now the new interior courtyard plan increases the footprint of the entire thing from 10,000 square feet to about 15,000 square feet, including the interior courtyard. Because of the larger footprint, I'm assuming, and actually Ms. Rakowski verified that, the new plan is to move it to a different area. That area that it is in now doesn't offer the same noise control that Mr. Cave noted. And it can also be seen directly from Wayland's Mill. I live there. I can see the site from my fence line. These are the facts before the Board of Supervisors as you make your decision. All this is to say, the proposed shelter idea is not going to be fixing a problem here in Madison with our resident landowners. It would be constructed by a Northern Virginia corporate entity that's been priced out economically in its Nova service location as it comes south to find a cheaper location. I don't know about y'all, but I believe more families, small farms, and independent home businesses fill our surrounding spaces and should fill them. And I don't believe that they will bring the same proposed trials and problems that 75 animals would bring. All these months, the Planning Committee has been meeting under the former county planner to put in place controls to manage documented ills that are going to come from this proposed SUP approval. But these controls are not likely to cure the ills, and tonight I saw all the controls have actually been taken on. We have no noise ordinance in Madison County, so if this is passed tonight, all of our residents have no recourse whatsoever to come to you and say, this is affecting our lives, our livelihood, our ability to use our properties and live our lives. We have no recourse. There's nothing out there to protect us if you don't do it tonight. The facts are these. This corporate business is not in keeping with the stating Madison County Plan of Development or the neighborhood properties that will be forced to exist alongside it. Life on Wayland's Mill and other boundary country roads will be changed permanently with animal noise, the additional commercial traffic on dirt roads, and the detrimental effect on all of our surrounding property values, whether we own 1 acre or whether we own 300. No matter how we good people feel about the issue of sheltering animals, no one wants the value or marketability of our family home or farm decreased because something was allowed by Madison County that didn't fit the ag zoning plan designation, and over which we've had no control and no choice. It is documented historically that an animal shelter is usually a neighborhood nuisance and is therefore located away from homes, farms, and neighborhoods. No one looking in a rural country life among forests and farms will want to live along a 15,000 square foot animal compound, regardless of how well-intentioned the corporation behind it is. All of us ask you, as Madison County landowners on the parcel map in front of you, which we've shared with you, please don't pass the special use permit tonight. And I just have one rebuttal thing that I wanted to say. We talk all the time about roads. Wayland's Mill is about 1.5 lanes. It's dirt. I don't know if you guys went up and down it like during the winter time, but it's almost impassable. When we talk about traffic that is generated by a shelter like this, you will certainly, as has been documented tonight, there will be vans bringing animals. In other meetings, it's been 3 to 4 times a week, okay? You mentioned paid staffing. You've got paid staffing coming in and out every day. You have volunteers that are coming to help the one resident who's there taking care of 50 dogs. You have vets, trash removal, supply deliveries. There's no question that there's going to be traffic generated by taking care of 50 dogs. It's impossible to do it with just one person. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Other public comment?
We have one online, if you're open to online.
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Danielle Storn, you're ready to go.
Hi, thank you so much. I recognize this is not a question and answer session, so I'll just make a comment for the record, which would be that I would like to see a notice of how we can appeal any decision made this evening. I know that Hart was able to apply a second time for their SUP, and I would hope that the residents and the citizens of Madison County would be afforded the same opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Yes, sir.
Tommy Carney again. I spent a lot of time making this document. Okay, it's a visual. It shows you how many people are against this sub. Okay, of the immediate neighbors, 24 are against it, 1 is for it. That does not include the other 15 people I talked to that are not in this circle that are against it. How many Madison County residents need to be against it to offset one
vote. If you vote for this, please list the benefits to the county in your commentary, so that when this is written up in the paper, the public can see why you voted with one person as opposed to 24 people.
Other public comment? Mr. Yagi, please.
So, first of all, Mr. Buchanan, I thank you for your honesty, that you're willing to have this in your backyard. I know that your family is very involved in animal rescue volunteerships, and that's great. I do have a request, though. When I've done some research, I'm a military intel guy, so you assume that I've done research and everybody's sitting up there, right? Many of you you have means. You have resources, you have land. So what I would request that you do is this temporary facility that they're wanting to put in, since you don't mind it being your neighbor, it will give me a reprieve to continue my Christian ministry for 2 years without hindering any dogs. That would be putting your money where your mouth is. The second thing, I have to take offense again with the county attorney on the definitions. I went in afterwards, and while he wasn't necessarily happy that I was talking to him, I said, what in the Madison definition of kennel makes you think that it's okay for a private animal shelter to be under compliance or in compliance with this? And he said the word safe. So as I mentioned, VDACs, which is the regulatory state level that put these definitions out, a private animal shelter, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, and it talks about exactly what Heart's mission is, and the term kennel. And then in the term kennel, guess what it says? For sale. So their definition is basically the same as ours. Ours is no broader than theirs is. Yet your condition 3 still says they're going to be under VDACs. But we're ignoring the definitions that VDACs put out on what an animal shelter is versus a kennel. Then, I just want to read from the Code of Ethics, which I know you all are familiar with. If I can find it in this. Bear with me. I'm sorry, I should have had this marked. Okay, the Code of Ethics. Recognizing that stewardship of the public interest must be in their primary concern. That's all of you. Members will work for the common good of the people of Madison County and not for any private or personal interest. Now explain to me how dogs and cats, and look, I love Proverbs. Solomon was a wise man. Now also, they did do animal sacrifices in the temple, understand, right? So they weren't always so kind. But come to the people of Madison not for any private or personal interest, and they will ensure a fair and equal treatment of all persons and claims. Now, you're doing that here. But animals across the entire state is not in your charter. I'm sorry, it's not. That's not what the Code of Conduct or Code of Ethics said. It's not what the oath of office said. So while I appreciate and hope you do give them a lot of money and others like them to continue with their mission, honestly, guys, it's not your job. Sorry. It's just not.
Any other public comment? Other public comment? All right, public comments closed. Comments from the board. Who would like to start? You want to start?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, I got a couple things that, I don't blame it on the folks that show up for these things. I mean, I've been doing this 13 years now, and I'm used to it, and I enjoy hearing the public comment. But I've got a newspaper, the Madison Eagle, dated January 25th, 2024, and Mr. Gessler says here, he's quoted as saying, "I purchased an A1 zone property thinking it would be residential." That's what he said. Okay, and I understand, I understand people think, but if you want residential, go buy a piece of property that's zoned residential. So I just thought, and that's a common thing. So, I'm not blaming anybody. It's just when I read that, it just kind of hit me. And then the other thing, in dealing with these land use issues for 13 years is, I was going to put in 71 because I think that's the capacity of this room. But I guess Mr. Yagi said 24. So I'm sitting here considering 24 people out of 14,000. That puts a different slant on it for me. I have to consider the whole county. We've got 14,000 people in this county, and I have been asking a lot. We've been talking about this forever, and so I've done a lot of talking to people, and I'm not getting the pushback from the others. Now, I could talk about this for an hour. I really could. And if anybody wants to call me, look it up and call me. But my prepared notes, the redesign of this facility, since this application was last deliberated, is a game changer, in my opinion. It is a testament to Hart's genuine desire to address the concerns of the neighbors while providing a much-needed service. And as I see it, noise is the overwhelming apprehension, and the new design satisfies me on that issue. The traffic issue is nominal. We hear that all the time. I don't know how many miles of dirt roads we don't have in this county. And condition 6 addresses the road maintenance. In December, the county planner and the planning commission recommended approval. And at the very first development meeting way back in, I don't know, what was that, October or November, we had a Economic Development Committee meeting. Both animal control and the animal shelter came in here and spoke favorably regarding the application. Now, I stopped by there yesterday. I talked to both animal control and the animal shelter yesterday. The animal shelter, she said she's in favor. The animal control, he says, I have no problem with it. Now, staff recommendations. So that's 4 sets of staff. Staff recommendations carry a lot of weight with me. Madison County has an excellent staff in all departments, and I personally take a lot of stock in their opinion. We have to. Without that, we would be lost. Hart is a respectable, professional organization with a solid history, and I think Madison should be proud that they considered us. I was a yes on this application back in December, and I remain a yes this evening. I could go on, but I'm tired, and my dogs need feeding.
Other comments? Anybody else?
I'm just going to make one, Mr. Chairman. I still don't know what the benefit to the citizens of Madison County are for this facility. I don't, what is it? Is it, pride? Is it monetary benefits? I don't see any. I see more detriments to the community than I do to the benefits in large in Madison County.
Anybody else? I've been debating this, and I don't take it lightly at all. I've been thinking about it, drove out there, sat at the end of Mr. Yagi's driveway, didn't hear his bear deterrent. It is quiet out there. I was also very surprised. I don't make it into that side of the county very much. I was surprised how densely populated it is. It is very, in comparison to some parts of the county, I didn't realize there were so many houses out there and then new ones being built. Madison County is constantly accused of being business not friendly, and we turn down everything. And we've heard everything under the sun. Traffic, terrible. I can go into specifics on different cases where doom and gloom on everything that has happened, or that was proposed, and then nothing has happened with them. Nothing. There are, being out there and then reading all of y'all's letters, I was alerted to another kennel facility that's out your way. And I must apologize to the fellow that's got Applewood or whatever that kennel is. He does have a special use permit. I spoke incorrectly previously. There's that one. There's the one that's doing the puppy doodles or whatever those are. And then there's a little private kennel down the road. I am big on personal property rights, and I'm not trying to negate surrounding landowners, but when you own a piece of land, I'm a believer that you should be allowed to do what you want with it. The big footprint, that doesn't really impress me a whole lot. I'm not real happy with that, if you really want the honest to God truth. I wish that they would have come at us and said, well, 25 dogs, let's start with that, and we'll build a bridge with the community. I'm not real happy that they haven't reached out to Mr. Yagi. I talked to him on the phone the other day. I told him about the tax revenue. That is. What? No. There you go. I did talk to Mr. Yagi. I told him that's the public interest on this. We're trying to be business friendly. We're trying to promote our property rights. We're trying to be kind of neighborly. I can go at a bunch of the other ones. Noise ordinance not going to happen in Madison. Everybody in Madison loves two things: kids and their pets and their hunting dogs and all of that. Y'all think you have a big crowd in here? Bring up noise ordinance. This room will be 300-400 people in here, and every one of them is against it. This is one I've debated. About 20 minutes before I got here this evening, I was thinking, which way am I going to go? And I'm on the personal property rights side. I apologize, that's against y'all, but I do support this application on the basis of that. What would y'all like to do with this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve special use SU-03-24-01.
And is that with the modifications to the fence and the time period?
Yes, sir. With those
And you amend your second? All right. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
There you go. All right. No information and correspondence, I don't presume. It passes. Public yes, sir. Yeah, we can do a roll call. Mr. Buchanan? Mr. Dawson?
Nay.
Mr. Jewett?
Nay.
Mr. Yao?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. There you go. Yes, sir, no problem. Public comment again. Public comment again. Please, same thing.
I'd have to say that Mr. Yao made a really nice argument, except for the fact that he was considering the entire county of Madison as opposed to the people directly affected by this, this building. And I would say, I would argue that that's totally irrelevant. It is totally irrelevant. And I think you had your mind made up before you came in here, and you just threw out just garbage facts that didn't mean anything. So, and I think you should be.
Other public comment? Is there any other formal public comment? All right, we don't have a closed session. What would y'all like to do? Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank y'all.
This conference is no longer being recorded.